Chapter 1104. Previously, Li Kai regarded Tan Xiu as a god, and the worship in her heart had reached an indescribable level. But after hearing Tan Xiu's words, she really couldn't accept it. Even her trust in Tan Xiu was shaken. In her heart, her mother was the kindest woman in the world and would never kill anyone, let alone kill 7 or 8 billion people. "You must be mistaken, divine Dr. Tang." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I can't reveal too many secrets of the heavens, but I can tell you a few simple things. Your mother was a cultivator in her past life and eventually became a monstrous she-devil. Her past life wasn't in this world, but I can see the scene of blood flowing like a sea and corpses piling up like a mountain through her memories." A cultivator? A she-devil? Li Kai was so anxious that tears began to swirl in her eyes. She desperately shook her head and said, "Impossible. It's absolutely impossible. My mother, everyone has their own destiny. You've already started cultivating. Although you can only faintly feel the true essence fluctuation inside your body, you've already stepped onto the path of cultivation," said Tan Xiu lightly. "There are some things you can know, such as the existence of the 6 paths of reincarnation and the existence of the King of Hell. Li Kai, this world is full of mysteries. There are only things you can't imagine, but there's nothing that doesn't exist. I need some time to calm down." Li Kai seemed to have lost her soul as she stiffly walked out of the room. She didn't even look at the fragrant meal again. Ouyang Lulu looked at Li Kai's disappearing back with a pitiful expression. She then rolled her eyes at Tan Xiu and snappily said, "I think you're too cruel to tell her such a thing. Although it's my first time seeing her, I can feel that she's very simple. I've taught her a shallow cultivation technique to increase her lifespan," said Tan Xiu calmly. "If she's diligent and has a good opportunity, it's possible for her to cultivate to the great ascension stage. However, her state of mind is too poor. She's like a grass under the shelter of a big tree, and it'll be very difficult for her to withstand the wind and rain. She can go further in the future as long as her mind and spirit are transformed. Instead of making her stumble in the future, it's better to be cruel to her now." Unfortunately, Ouyang Lulu understood Tan Xiu's intention and asked, "What's a pity?" Tan Xiu sighed, "It's a pity that the sins committed by her mother are too heavy. Even if I can temporarily cure her, I'm afraid she won't be able to live for more than 10 years. In addition, I need to use Li Kai's lifespan to extend her life. Therefore, if she lives for another 10 years, Li Kai will live 60 years less." 60 years? Ouyang Lulu's body shook and she couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Li Kai's lifespan should be more than 80 years if she hadn't met me. Li Kai is already in her 20s, so if I treat her now, she will die immediately. That's why I gave her the Essence Longevity Pill and helped her step onto the path of cultivation. She can be more diligent in the future and has better opportunities. As her cultivation increases, she might be able to live for another 10 or 20 years." Ouyang Lulu abruptly got up from the chair and shook her head desperately. "Aren't you being too cruel to Li Kai, Tan Xiu? Why didn't you tell her before?" Tan Xiu said, "You don't have to tell her, because even if I tell her, she will choose to save her mother without hesitation. Now that she didn't know, she didn't have much burden in her heart. It was good to live like this. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure of fate." Ouyang Lulu was silent. She understood that what Tan Xiu said was right. Anyone who knew how long they could live would have a heavy burden on their heart and mind. Especially a young girl who only had 10 or 20 years to live, she would be unable to breathe under the pressure. "Kai air is so pitiful." Ouyang Lulu faintly sighed. Tan Xiu said, "Perhaps this is her destiny, or perhaps this is also her opportunity. As for what happens to her in the future, it will depend on her mother." "What do you mean?" Ouyang Lulu was confused. Tan Xiu said, "If her mother had died earlier, I could have taken her as my disciple. At that time, even if I had to pay a higher price, I could have made up for her lost lifespan. I can even make her stronger, to the extent that it's not impossible for her to become an immortal in the future." Ouyang Lulu was speechless. She really couldn't say anything about this matter. 10 minutes later, Hu Shaoqun came to the room and saw Tan Xiu and Ouyang Lulu having a meal. He curiously asked, "Didn't come over? Where is she now?" "She went back to rest," said Tan Xiu. Hu Shaoquan nodded and walked to the front of Tan Xiu. He handed a bank card to Tan Xiu and said, "How Zizi originally wanted to see you in person to apologize to you. But I told him that you were tired and had already rested, so he entrusted me to give this to you." "A bank card?" A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face. Every time someone offended him, it seemed that the final solution was to compensate him with money. "I don't lack money," replied Tan Xiu calmly. Hu Shaoquan hesitated for a moment before he forced a smile and said, "Tan Xiu, Hao Zizi and Wu Delong are my friends. We have a good friendship. Can you look at my face and not haggle with them? Those brats are actually not bad at heart. It's just that they've been spoiled by their families. You can rest assured that I'll teach them a good lesson later so that they can keep a low profile in the future." Tan Xiu picked up the bank card and asked, "How much money is in it?" Hu Shaoquan secretly sighed in relief and said, 40 million. 10 million for each of them. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Although it's the smallest compensation I've ever received, let's just forget about it. Tell them on my behalf that they don't bring disaster to their families in the future. Otherwise, let alone them, even their families will perish along with them." "I'll definitely tell them." Hu Shaoquan's expression turned solemn. He could tell that Tan Xiu's words were not only aimed at Wu Delong and Hao Zizi, but also at him. Recalling Tan Xiu's identity gave him a faint headache. He would have dared to provoke an ordinary person, but Tan Xiu was a descendant of a super family. Moreover, he himself was outstanding enough to make anyone's hair stand on end. He really couldn't afford to offend him. "Can I discuss something with you, Divine Dr. Tang?" Hu Shaoquan watched as Tan Xiu put away the bank card. Then, he took out another bank card from his pocket and silently placed it in front of Tan Xiu. "You don't have to give me money to discuss something, do you?" asked Tan Xiu with a strange expression. "Don't mention the 49% shares if you really want it." Hu Shaoquan shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about the 49% shares. If you really want it, I would have given it to you even if today's matter didn't happen. What I want to discuss with you is something else." "Tell me about it." Tan Xiu pointed to the seat in front of him. Hu Shaoquan took a seat in front of Tan Xiu and forced a wry smile. "Didn't you say that I don't have much time left to live? Do you think you can help me and let me live a little longer? Didn't you say that you don't trust me?" asked Tan Xiu with a strange expression. "I'd rather believe it than not." Hu Shaoquan let out a hollow laugh. "You're the famous young divine doctor in the country, after all. If what you said is true, then How much is the card?" asked Tan Xiu with a smile. 100 million, said Hu Shaoquan hurriedly. Tan Xiu gave him a thumbs up and praised, "You're really courageous. You even dare to take out 100 million to ask me to help you despite having doubts. All right, I'll take the money and give you a medicinal pill. You'll be safe and sound for at least 10 years after taking it." "A medicinal pill?" Hu Shaoquan stared blankly at Tan Xiu with a puzzled look on his face. Tan Xiu threw a life essence pill to him and said, "I can tell you that you got a big bargain. But since I've chosen to be a good person, then I'll do it to the end. As long as you take this pill and keep doing good deeds in the following days, you can live for more than 10 years. Furthermore, the more good deeds you do, the longer your lifespan will be. When the good deeds you've done have accumulated to a certain extent, it can even guarantee you to live to a ripe old age." Hu Shaoquan fiddled with the life essence pill. When he tore the wax paper on the outside, an invisible force suddenly hit the back of his hand and the life essence pill in his hand instantly shot into his mouth. Just as he was about to spit it out, the life essence pill turned into a surging hot current in his mouth and flowed down his throat into his abdomen. Hu Shaoquan was scared out of his wits, but he could feel that the surging hot current was not harmful to him at all. On the contrary, as the hot current dispersed and poured into his limbs and 5 organs, his body unexpectedly became very comfortable. Even his spirit was much better than before. A miraculous elixir? Hu Shaoquan's heart was filled with excitement. A few minutes later, Hu Shaoquan felt that his body was getting more and more comfortable. He even had the urge to sleep comfortably, so he bid farewell to Tan Xiu and walked toward the door. Just as he was about to walk to the door, He seemed to recall something and returned to Tan Xiu. He took out a golden card from his pocket and handed it to Tan Xiu, saying, "Mr. Tang, I'm going to hold a small auction here tomorrow. I wonder if you're interested in participating?" "An auction? What kind of items will be auctioned?" asked Tan Xiu curiously. "There are only a few items to be auctioned, but all of them are very valuable," said Hu Shaoquan. "As a matter of fact, I hold 2 to 3 small auctions here every year. Generally speaking, as long as the items are worth more than 10 million yuan, they can be auctioned here." Tan Xiu thought that he had nothing to do tomorrow, so he directly agreed after asking the time of the auction. On the contrary, Ouyang Lulu couldn't help but roll her eyes a few times after hearing Tan Xiu's answer. Her coquettish appearance made Hu Shaoquan's heart flutter when he inadvertently saw it. After Hu Shaoquan left, Ouyang Lulu immediately said, "You promised to accompany me for dinner, shopping, and watching a movie tomorrow. Even if it's just eating, shopping, and watching a movie, it won't affect our participation in the auction," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "High-level auctions usually have good things. If I come across something you like tomorrow, I'll buy it for you." Chapter 1105. The next day, Tan Xiu accompanied Ouyang Lulu to stroll around, eat, go shopping, and watch movies. He didn't feel any discomfort. However, he was now a celebrity and many people remembered him, so he used some special means to change his appearance. For the whole day, Ouyang Lulu, who was like a she-devil in the eyes of others, turned into a cheerful little girl beside Tan Xiu, eating, drinking, and having fun to her heart's content. Evening. Tan Xiu returned to the Blue Starfish Mansion with Ouyang Lulu. It was already early in the morning and night had arrived. The Blue Starfish Mansion, which originally didn't have many guests, had an endless stream of them at this time. "Looks like they're all successful people." Tan Xiu's eyes swept over the guests around and sighed with a faint smile. "What successful people? They're just putting on an act." Ouyang Lulu curled her lips. "Real successful people are like you. You won't easily show off your wealth even if you have hundreds of millions of wealth. You won't show off even if you have monstrous abilities. You're not like those people who don't know their surname just because they have a bit of money." Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "You're a bit extreme, Lu. I know you want to praise me, but you don't have to hit others. In today's world, in this era, the standard for ordinary people to prove their success is money and status. Let's not talk about people all over the world. Just look at our country's population of more than 1 billion people. How many real rich people do we have? Being able to become someone above others means that they have the ability. As for their shortcomings, who can be a sage without faults? Let's not look at people through the door crack." Ouyang Lulu raised her chin and snorted. "In any case, you're the only outstanding person in my opinion. If any of them can be better than you, I'll admit that they're amazing." Tan Xiu shook his head and forced a wry smile. He had thousands of years of experience, so there was simply no comparison between them. However, Ouyang Lulu's heartfelt worship made him feel very comfortable. He put his arm around her fragrant shoulder and walked inside with a smile. Auction. There were all kinds of auctions in all kinds of circles. For example, at this auction, there were some strange things being auctioned. Although some of the things were very precious, most of the people who came to participate were locals of Shanghai. A few of them came from the surrounding cities. Tan Xiu. Under the guidance of the waiter, Tan Xiu and Ouyang Lulu had just arrived at the auction venue when they heard someone calling his name. This made him slightly stunned and secretly surprised. One had to know that his current appearance had been changed. Unless it was someone very close to him, it would be very difficult for anyone to recognize his identity. Gu Changmin. Tan Xiu turned his head in the direction of the sound and saw Gu Changmin and Jin Xingkui walking towards him. However, he was keenly aware that when the two of them saw his appearance, they were slightly stunned. Tan Xiu released Ouyang Lulu's shoulder and smilingly walked over, saying, "Brother Gu, Brother Jin, I didn't expect to bump into you here. What? Are you also here to snatch the treasure?" Gu Changmin and Jin Xingkui glanced at each other with a strange expression on their faces. Then, Gu Changmin asked, "Brother Tang, I thought I called the wrong person when I saw your profile just now, but I thought I called the wrong person when I saw your face. But your appearance. The celebrity effect is too good, so I dressed up a bit to avoid being recognized everywhere. Tan Xiu said with a smile. You know, I don't like being looked at like a monkey by others. Gu Changmin and Jin Xinghui suddenly understood and smilingly said, Brother Tang, this old brother really admires your low-key character. Which one of the youngsters these days doesn't want to show off and constantly show off? You, on the other hand, are so low-key that it makes people's hair stand on end. Jin Xinghui laughed. Brother Tang, you're making a fortune in silence. However, I must say you're really something, Brother Tang. The project we've established together is almost halfway done, yet you seem to have never been to the construction site. You don't even go to my company. Isn't it too much to be a hands-off shopkeeper? Isn't it because of you, Brother Jin? Tan Xiu said with a smile. If it were someone I didn't feel at ease with, I would have reported 3 times a day. Jin Xinghui was very satisfied with Tan Xiu's answer. After laughing, he grinned and said, Brother Tang, this big brother feels that it's worth it even if it's bitter and tiring. You can rest assured that our project is progressing smoothly. The funds can start to come in half a year at most. You can count the money when the time comes. Tan Xiu gave a thumbs up and praised, working with Brother Jin is really a pleasure. How about this? I'll treat you two to a few cups of wine after the auction is over. Deal. It's a deal. Gu Changmin and Jin Xinghui replied with a smile. Immediately after, some businessmen and bosses in the surrounding Shanghai saw Gu Changmin and Jin Xinghui chatting with Tan Xiu and came to greet them. Tan Xiu didn't want to chat with outsiders, so he found an excuse to leave and casually found a seat with Ouyang Lulu in the auction venue. This kid, he's really... Gu Changmin shook his head and looked at Tan Xiu's back as he left and sighed with a wry smile. Jin Xinghui squinted his eyes and whispered, Brother Gu, he's always like this. Else, there won't be any place for us to play in this world. What do you mean? Gu Changmin stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression. Don't you think that if his character becomes more flamboyant, there will be countless business opportunities waiting for him with his ability and identity? Said Jin Xinghui. Which rich boss doesn't want to cooperate with someone with such an identity and ability like him? I dare say that no matter what industry in Shanghai, as long as Tan Xiu wants to intervene, there will be countless people waving their checkbooks to find him. Gu Changmin nodded without a word and forced a smile. You're right. Let's not talk about his ability. Just his identity alone will probably make countless people want to circle around him and stuff a lot of money into his pocket. Speaking of this matter, I really admire him now. Just think about it. Which one of those scions of the big families in the imperial capital doesn't rely on their status and background to get dividends from other companies and support those companies? But what about Tan Xiu? None at all. Even if someone sends money to his door, I'm afraid he won't even look at it. That's right. That's why he's so terrifying. Jin Xinghui sighed. He doesn't take the initiative to ask for money from others. Even if others take the initiative to send him money, I'm afraid he won't accept it. Yet, by relying on his own ability, he founded the rapidly developing Magnificent Tang Corporation. The amount of money he earns is definitely 100 or even 1,000 times more than those second-generation officials who get dividends from other companies. Speaking of which, Tan Xiu's current wealth has far surpassed ours, right? Gu Changmin heavily nodded and said, according to my estimation, the wealth of the Magnificent Tang Corporation alone is probably more than 50 billion yuan. So much. Jin Xinghui's spirit was shaken and disbelief was written all over his face. It must be noted that the Magnificent Tang Corporation had only been established for more than a year. How could it create so much profit in such a short time? Even if the company's products were extremely popular and the supply simply couldn't meet the demand, it shouldn't be. Gu Changmin was surprised and said, You're now in a cooperative relationship with the Magnificent Tang Corporation. Don't you know the company's investment in Star City? Just the investment and construction of Star City's new city alone can probably make the Magnificent Tang Corporation earn tens of billions of yuan. Coupled with the several products of the Magnificent Tang Corporation, the speed of making money is much faster than the bank's money printing machine. I estimate the total assets of the Magnificent Tang Corporation to be more than 50 billion yuan, yet I still feel that it's too little. Jin Shinkue gave it a thought and still felt that Gu Changmin's words were a bit exaggerated. He had a certain understanding of the products of the magnificent Tang Corporation. The output of each product was not much. Although the price was very high, the annual profit was probably only 20 to 30 billion yuan. Adding the investment income of Star City, it was still less than 50 billion yuan. Brother Gu, unless Tan Xiu has other investments, it's impossible for the total assets of the magnificent Tang Corporation to reach 50 billion yuan, said Jin Shinkue with all seriousness. Gu Changmin asked with a strange expression, "You're really smart, but you're muddle-headed this time. Don't tell me he doesn't have any shares in the real estate business developed by your company? Also, he's the Everlasting Feast Hall's boss. Did you forget such an important thing? Also, Hao Lei's boss is also Tan Xiu. How much wealth does the Everlasting Feast Hall and Grand Fortune Jewelry have?" Hiss. After being reminded by Gu Changmin, Jin Shinkue suddenly realized that he had underestimated Tan Xiu's wealth. Not to mention the Everlasting Feast Hall and Grand Fortune Jewelry, just the income from Tan Xiu's investment in him would be a huge figure after half a year. Who knew if Tan Xiu had other investments using the magnificent Tang Corporation? If he did, then let alone 50 billion yuan, even 100 billion yuan would not be far away. It's like sitting on a mountain of gold. Jin Shinkue forced a smile and sighed. Upon hearing it, Gu Changmin immediately chuckled and said, "Regardless of whether he's sitting on a mountain of gold or not, just his identity and background alone is the luckiest thing for us to have a good relationship with him. I'm going to talk to him about the cooperation when we have supper tonight. I hope he'll be interested." "You want to cooperate with him?" Jin Shinkue was surprised. "Do you have any good projects?" "I've been optimistic about the logistics industry recently," said Gu Changmin with a smile. "I'm preparing to set up a large domestic logistics company. Whether it's the delivery speed or the domestic coverage, I want to surpass the other large logistics companies. If Tan Xiu is willing to join, I'll use his identity and background to negotiate with those e-commerce bosses." "Do you think those e-commerce bosses won't give us any business even if they have their own logistics network?" Upon hearing it, Jin Shinkue immediately forced a wry smile and shook his head. "You're snatching meat from other people's bowl. Those e-commerce platforms will never pay attention to you if Tan Xiu doesn't exist. Since Tan Xiu's identity can be used, why waste it?" Gu Changmin grinned. Chapter 1106. Tan Xiu was clueless about Gu Changmin's plan. At this moment he was looking at the guests coming in from the outside, many of whom were familiar faces. This situation made him secretly look forward to the next auction. Generally, the items auctioned in such a high-grade auction were very precious. Maybe there would be one or two things that were useful to him. There are really a lot of people coming to the auction. Although Ouyang Lulu saw a lot of acquaintances, she didn't get up to greet them. With Tan Xiu at her side, she didn't want to talk to others. Some business celebrities from several nearby cities also came to participate, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Also, there should be some people from the occult doors. Just the ones who have arrived already know martial arts. Ouyang Lulu was surprised and asked, "Why would people from the occult doors come to join in the fun? Don't tell me there are magic weapons they can use in the auction?" "Who knows?" Tan Xiu chuckled. "However, people from the occult doors hide in the city and live the same life as ordinary people. Only under special circumstances will they reveal their identity. Usually, these kinds of people have very powerful abilities." "That's true." Ouyang Lulu nodded. "People from the occult doors have special skills. They have their own ways and channels if they want to seek wealth. They can get a lot of funds with just a little bit of means. Furthermore, people from the occult doors also have their own social network and social circles. Some of them who are businessmen have joined hands to seek profits in various industries. Like your Ouyang family?" Tan Xiu chuckled. "That's right." Ouyang Lulu smiled and said, "The Ouyang family did have a lot of shady means when they started their business. Later on, the family continued to grow and slowly washed their name to become a proper merchant family. However, more than half of Jingmen Island's underground world is still controlled by our Ouyang family. Tan Xiao smiled and was about to speak when a familiar face suddenly appeared in his line of sight. It was Ji Mu from Changshi City's Ji family. "What's up?" Ouyang Lulu noticed Tan Xiao's strange expression and immediately followed his gaze and asked. "I just found a friend from Changshi City," said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. "Good relationship?" Ouyang Lulu asked. Tan Xiao thought for a moment and said, "It's all right. His character was good, and his temper was to my taste. In addition, this kid is also a cultivator, but I didn't expect that he would actually break through to the qi refinement realm in such a short period of time. Moreover, it's the middle stage of qi refinement." Ouyang Lulu curled her lips and disdainfully said, "He's just at the middle stage of qi refining. I can poke him to death with just a finger." Tan Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, "He started cultivating much later than you, Lulu. Moreover, you have the assistance of the cultivation resources that I gave you, but he doesn't. Everything is based on one's own efforts. True essence is cultivated bit by bit." Upon hearing this, Ouyang Lulu immediately nodded and no longer looked at him with a contemptuous attitude. Tan Xiao smiled and said, "I'll ask him to come and sit with us." Then, his lips moved slightly, and a sound wave was transmitted. In the auction hall, Ji Mu was accompanying a silver-haired old lady with a very respectful expression on his face. Suddenly, a voice rang out by his ear, causing him to be stunned. He turned his head to look around, and when he saw a person with a familiar appearance, but he couldn't remember where he had seen this person before, waving at him, a sense of mystery arose in his heart. "Who is he?" Ji Mu thought for a while and then approached the silver-haired old lady and whispered, "Grandma, I'm going to see someone. Would you like to find a place to sit first?" The silver-haired old lady had a kind and amiable expression. A smile appeared on her face as she gently nodded and smilingly said, "You youngsters have your own circle, so you don't need to accompany this old lady. I'm going back to the north after attending the auction today." Ji Mu was shaken inwardly and asked with a bit of reluctance, "Grandma, can't you stay in Changshi for a while? During this period of time, I have been by your side, asking you for advice on cultivation, and I have benefited a lot. I haven't had the time to take care of you for a while." The silver-haired old lady said with a smile, "Even if we get together, we still have to part ways. I haven't seen your grandma for more than a decade. I didn't expect that we would be separated by heaven and earth. I've been in Changshi for some time now, so it's time for me to go back to the north. Else, those brats at home will definitely cause a ruckus." Ji Mu helplessly nodded and said in a low voice, "Then I'll go greet my friend first, Grandma. I'll come back to you later." The silver-haired old lady slowly nodded and said with a smile, "Go ahead." Ji Mu slightly nodded in response. He then turned around and walked towards Tang Xiao's direction. Although he really wanted this formidable mother-in-law in the cultivation world to stay, he could only endure the reluctance to see her off since she insisted on leaving. However, the voice just now was very strange. It directly appeared in his ears instead of calling out to him, which made him secretly startled. But he really didn't know this familiar person, yet he couldn't recall where he had seen him. "Friend, you called me?" Ji Mu came to Tan Xiao and cupped his fists. However, his pupils suddenly contracted when his eyes fell on Ouyang Lulu beside Tan Xiao. Tan Xiao pointed to the empty seat next to him and smilingly said, "It's me, Ji Mu. It's just that I don't want to be recognized, so I changed my face." A pleasantly surprised look appeared on Ji Mu's face. After nodding to Ouyang Lulu, he quickly sat on the other side of Tan Xiao and excitedly said, "Brother Tang, I didn't expect to meet you here. To be honest, your disguise technique is really amazing. Although I felt that you looked familiar, I really couldn't recognize your identity." "It's just a small trick," said Tan Xiao with a smile. "But you're pretty good. You actually broke through to the mid-stage of qi refining in such a short time. If my guess is correct, the old lady beside you should have given you a lot of pointers, right?" "Yeah." Ji Mu nodded. "Grandma Zueying indeed gave me a lot of pointers and benefited me a lot. Not far away." The silver-haired old lady casually found an empty seat and sat down. Her tranquil eyes glanced at Ji Mu's direction and was about to retract her gaze when her expression slightly changed all of a sudden. Her eyes then landed on Tan Xiao, who was beside Ji-moo. "That's," the silver-haired old lady observed with rapt attention. A few seconds later, her body slightly trembled and a look of ecstasy appeared on her face. Almost without hesitation, she stood up and walked toward Tan Xiu's direction. When she came before Tan Xiu, she ignored Ji-moo, bowed and said, "Is it really you, Mr. Tang?" Tan Xiu got up and smilingly said, "It seems that you recognized me. Did you just come from the Himalayas?" "I've been here for some time. The war situation there is going smoothly, so I wanted to take advantage of this trip from my home in the north to visit my old sister in Changshi City," said the silver-haired old lady excitedly. "I didn't expect that my old sister had passed away more than a decade ago." "Don't be so formal. Let's sit down and talk," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "All right." Under Ji-moo's dumbfounded expression, the silver-haired old lady softly asked, "Can I sit in your seat?" Ji-moo sobered up from his daze and hurriedly gave up his seat, saying, "Sure, sure. Please have a seat, Grandma." After the silver-haired old lady took a seat, she said in a soft voice, "Mr. Tang, I thought that it would be very difficult to see you again in this life ever since we parted ways in the Himalayas. Never did I expect that I would bump into you here. Those old geezers would definitely envy me to death if they knew about this." "It's nothing." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "We're all fellow Taoists in the cultivation world, so it's very easy to meet each other if you want to. It's just that I didn't expect that you would be together with this Ji-moo brat. Ji-moo's grandmother and I are old sisters who grew up together," said the silver-haired old lady. "I came to Changshi this time to see her. If my guess is correct, Ji-moo's grandmother should be a cultivator, right?" Tan Xiu said with a smile. "It's just that I find it strange that none of the younger generations of the Ji family obtained the inheritance." The silver-haired old lady shook her head and said, "I don't know about the specific reason. Perhaps my old sister felt that her grandson was the only outstanding one in the Ji family, so she only imparted the cultivation technique to him." Ji-moo, who was sitting next to the silver-haired old lady, hurriedly said, "Grandma, it's not my grandmother who imparted the cultivation technique to me, but Brother Tang." The silver-haired old lady stared blankly and immediately asked in surprise, "It's Mr. Tang who imparted the cultivation technique to you? The relationship between the two of you?" "Ji-moo and I are friends," said Tan Xiu with a smile. Ji-moo's spirit was shaken upon hearing this. At this moment, how could he not see that this mother-in-law of his, whom he greatly worshipped, was very respectful to Tan Xiu? It was as if Tan Xiu was her elder. It was precisely because of this that Tan Xiu had a higher position in his heart. The silver-haired old lady nodded with a smile. She then turned to look at Ji-moo and sighed, "Little Moo, having a friend like Mr. Tang is simply a blessing accumulated in your previous life. You must seek guidance from Mr. Tang in the future. He can definitely make you more outstanding." "All right." Ji-moo looked at Tan Xiu with fiery eyes. However, he still asked the question in his heart, "Grandma, haven't you been away from the north for a long time? How did you get to know Brother Tang? Also, what's the situation in the Himalayas you just mentioned?" The silver-haired old lady glanced at Tan Xiu and then shook her head without a word. "It's nothing actually," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "We fought side by side and fought some demonic beasts for a while. You're too weak, so don't ask about the things over there. Wait until you break through to the foundation establishment stage or the golden core stage, then go there to gain some experience." Demonic beasts? Ji-moo was shaken inwardly. He knew that Tan Xiu and Grandma Xing were very powerful. He didn't know about Tan Xiu's cultivation, but he knew that Tan Xiu was very powerful. But Grandma Xing was at the late stage of foundation establishment, a very powerful existence. Chapter 1107. As the lights in the hall were extinguished, the soft lights on the auction stage were turned on, illuminating the auction stage. Ouyang Lulu then said in a low voice, "The auction is about to begin." As expected, at this time, more than 200 guests had come to participate in the auction. More than half of the seats in the auction venue were occupied. At the entrance of the venue, the doors slowly closed, and a handsome young host wearing white gloves came to a stop with a smile. "Welcome to the Blue Starfish Mansion, everyone. I'd like to thank Boss Hu Shaoquan of the Blue Starfish Mansion for providing this auction venue. I'm Cheng Huan, the auctioneer of today's auction. Having said that, he slightly paused and then pointed to the projector screen that had just been turned on and smilingly said, "This is the list of items to be auctioned in today's auction. I believe that all of you must have inquired about some of the items that will be auctioned in advance. I'm afraid there are also some rare treasures that you like among them. So, I'll cut to the chase and start the auction now." The first item to be auctioned is a painting collected by a Grandmaster collector. The auction continued. Tan Xiu, who was sitting below, had no interest in the first item. He knew how to draw, and if he was willing to auction his work, it would definitely fetch a sky-high price. The second item was a set of purple clay teapots, which was once used by the Imperial Palace. Hence, its price was very high. As the auction continued, items were auctioned off one after another. Tan Xiu secretly found that many guests were bidding, but there was no malicious bidding. In addition, the lowest price of each auction item was worth more than 5 million yuan. Ji Mu, have you inquired about the number of items to be auctioned this time? Tan Xiu looked at Ji Mu and asked him across Grandma Xing. There are a total of 32 items. I only inquired about a few of them, but I don't know about the other items to be auctioned, answered Ji Mu. Tan Xiu nodded and his eyes shifted back to the auctioneer. 8:10 p.m. After the hostess in a cheongsam stepped onto the auction stage again, the auctioneer said with a smile, "The next item to be auctioned is a very interesting one." This item had been appraised by over a dozen appraisers, but none of them had been able to identify what it was. The only thing he could be sure of was that this item should be quite old. Please take a look at the projector. On the projector screen, the ceremonial lady lifted the yellow silk covering it, revealing an antique wooden box in front of everyone. As the wooden box was opened, a crystal-clear bead appeared in front of everyone. "What's that?" A look of surprise flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. As he instantly released his divine sense, it quickly enveloped the crystal-clear bead. As he observed it, his expression became shocked. "Dragon Ball?" Tan Xiu's eyes stared unblinkingly at the Dragon Ball in the hands of the ceremonial lady. Shock rose from the bottom of his heart because he could clearly feel that the Dragon Ball was extremely rich in energy. Moreover, it was not an ordinary Dragon Ball, but an ancient divine Dragon Ball. On Earth, how could there be an ancient divine Dragon Ball? When he was in the immortal world, he once obtained a dragon pearl of an ancient divine dragon, but he had to pay a huge price to obtain it. It was also because of the huge energy essence contained in that Dragon Ball that he finally broke through the shackles and became a supreme in the immortal world. Grandma Xing had been paying attention to Tan Xiu. At this time, she noticed the strange expression on Tan Xiu's face and her expression immediately moved. Her eyes lingered on the Dragon Ball for more than 10 seconds before she asked in a low voice, "Do you know what this thing is, Mr. Tang?" Tan Xiu nodded without a word and glanced at her. "It's a good thing." "What good thing is it?" asked Grandma Xuing hurriedly. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and waited for the auction to begin. He wasn't afraid that Grandma Xuing would compete with him for this Dragon Ball since she knew how powerful he was. Since she already knew that it was a good thing, he wouldn't be polite to her if she dared to fight for it. He was determined to get this Dragon Ball. With a bright smile, the auctioneer said, "More than a dozen appraisers may not be able to judge what this Dragon Ball is, but an ancient object is always a good thing. What's more, this Dragon Ball is crystal clear and almost comparable to a luminescent pearl, so the starting bid is 5 million. Guests who want to get this Dragon Ball must increase the bid by at least 100,000 yuan each time." 5 million? A Dragon Ball? More than 200 guests came to participate in the auction. Half a minute after the auctioneer's voice faded away, none of them made a bid. It was because they didn't know what this thing was. After all, there were many good things in the world, so who could tell whether it was a treasure or not? If it was a trash, spending 5 million yuan would make them feel depressed. 1 million. Finally, an old man wearing reading glasses and a flowery coat raised the number plate placed next to him. When he saw the surrounding people looking at him, he immediately smiled and said, 5 million isn't that expensive. I'll just take it as a stroke of luck. Maybe it's a good thing." The auctioneer secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard someone bid. He had presided over many auctions and had many auction items that failed to be auctioned in the auction. But he had never encountered such a situation today. If something failed to be auctioned, it would affect his auction. Therefore, with a smile on his face, the auctioneer gave the old man a thumbs up and praised, "This old Mr. really has a discerning eye. Maybe this Dragon Ball is a great treasure. After all, those appraisers said that it's worth more than 5 million, which proves that it's not a common object. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else who wants to increase the bid? If there isn't, then this item, which might be a heavenly treasure, will be in that old man's pocket. 5 million. As the auctioneer's voice faded away, someone finally made a bid. However, not many people were willing to bid for this item. After several rounds of bidding, the final price stopped at 2 million. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the bid? Asked the auctioneer again. Tan Xiao slowly raised the number plate placed at the side and said with a faint smile, 5 million. A one-time increase of 300,000 wasn't much. However, his bid still attracted a lot of people's attention. In particular, Gu Changmin and Jin Xingkui, who knew his true identity, turned their heads to look at the Dragon Ball and their eyes instantly lit up. It should be a good item. After all, anything that can catch his eye is absolutely extraordinary, said Jin Xingkui in a low voice. Gu Changmin slightly nodded and said, I have the same feeling. But since he has already bid, let's not join in the bidding. After all, it's just an item. We can't afford to offend him. I understand. If he finally wins this item, we'll ask him what it is when we drink later, said Jin Xingkui in a low voice. All right. Gu Changmin nodded silently. The middle-aged man who bid 2 million turned to look at Tan Xiao with a surprised look. After realizing that he didn't know Tan Xiao, he raised the number plate again and said, 7 million. Tan Xiao raised the number plate and said with a smile, 5 million. 8 million. The middle-aged man raised the number plate again. 5 million. Tan Xiao also raised his number plate. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment. He turned to look at Tan Xiao again and immediately gave up bidding. In the end, the Dragon Ball was won by Tan Xiao at the price of 5 million. Tan Xiao also chose to go backstage to collect it, so he returned to his seat 5 or 6 minutes later with the Dragon Ball. At this moment, no one knew how big the surprise in Tan Xiao's heart was. The Dragon Ball of an ancient divine dragon contained a huge amount of energy. Let alone 5 million, even if all the money in the banks on Earth were added up, it still wouldn't be as precious as this Dragon Ball. Half an hour later, as the auction came to an end, an item appeared in Tan Xiao's eyes again. When he saw the appearance of the item on the projector and heard the host's speech, a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. It was a frisbee. The high-tech aircraft developed by the magnificent Tang Corp had never been sold to the public except for trading it to the military. But now, a frisbee unexpectedly appeared here in this auction. It made Tan Xiao instantly realize that if it wasn't a problem within the military, then it must be a problem with someone in the magnificent Tang Corporation. I've explained all its energy efficiency clearly. Now, I'll announce its base price of 10 million. Each bid must be at least 1 million. The host said with a smile. Wait. Tan Xiao straightly got up from his seat. Under the watchful eyes of the host and more than 200 guests, he strode to the auction stage. His cold eyes swept over the 200 guests and immediately said in a deep voice, This item is very interesting and I'm determined to get it today. No matter how much you bid, I'll add 1 million to it. However, the host's expression greatly changed and shock could be seen in his eyes. He looked at Tan Xiao's cold expression and hurriedly said, Sir, you must consider it carefully. If the guests bid too high, I'm afraid it will lead to you. Tan Xiao raised his hand to interrupt him and indifferently said, Don't worry. No one dares to bid today, else they'll be making things difficult for me. I know my current behavior will offend some people, but this thing is too important. Whoever dares to compete with me will have a miserable end. An old man in the second row frowned and unhappily said, Young man, don't be too arrogant. Even if you have some money, don't treat us as poor people. An auction of this level is not the place for you to show off your abilities. Tan Xiu sneered and said, "Do you want to see if I'm showing off or not?" Chapter 1108. In the fifth row. Gu Changmin directly got up from his chair and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, since he wants to buy this thing, I, Gu Changmin, also hope that others won't compete with him. Otherwise, it's tantamount to making an enemy out of me." In an instant, the entire venue was in an uproar, and many people were shocked as they discussed among themselves. What's going on? How come Gu Changmin jumped out to support a young man at this time? Who's this young man? How is this possible? Is Gu Changmin out of his mind? Whoever stands out at this time is tantamount to making an enemy out of everyone present. He's a businessman, isn't he afraid of offending all the rich people in Shanghai and the nearby cities? This is weird. What's the origin of this young man? How can he get Gu Changmin's support? Is he Gu Changmin's illegitimate son outside? There's definitely something fishy going on. That aero glider is a special thing. I didn't expect that someone would jump out to take it for himself before anyone even started bidding. Let's wait and see. I'm not afraid that Gu Changmin dares to make an enemy out of everyone. The old man in the second row had an angry look on his face. He knew Gu Changmin and even had some friendship with him. But he never imagined that Gu Changmin would actually jump out to support that arrogant and unruly young man at this time. What did he mean by that? Did he want to go against him? Even if Gu Changmin's Dingshan Media Group was powerful, he wasn't someone to be trifled with. He could absolutely suppress Gu Changmin with his wealth and connections. Boss Gu, I hope you know what you're doing. That brat is clearly going against everyone present, yet you jumped out now. Do you want to tear all pretense of cordiality with all the guests present? The old man pondered for a moment and indifferently said. Gu Changmin glanced at Tan Xiu and slowly said, "I told you that whoever goes against him will be my enemy. Since he wants this thing, no one can take it away today." The old man suddenly stood up and coldly said, "Gu Changmin, you're not qualified to say that. Everyone present knows that this aero glider is a good thing. Don't tell me you're colluding with him? Do you want to take such a good thing for yourself?" At this moment, Jin Xinkue directly stood up and indifferently said, "If Gu Changmin is not qualified to say it, then count me in. Although I, Jin Xinkue, am not a powerful person, I will say it here. If anyone dares to snatch the flying disc from him today, they will be my enemy." Ji Mu looked at Tan Xiu with a bit of worship in his eyes. He then stood up and said in a clear voice, "Count my Ji family in Changxi City. Whoever makes an enemy of him will be making an enemy of my Changxi Ji family. Although my Ji family is nothing in Shanghai, I believe that we can still bite some hard bones if we shed all pretense of cordiality and risk our lives." At this time, Ouyang Lulu also stood up and indifferently said, "What about my Jingmen Island's Ouyang family?" Granny Xuing smiled faintly and said, "This old one hasn't left the north for many years. I don't know how much those brats in my family have done, but I'll still say something. Whoever dares to go against Mr. Tang will be my enemy against the Shun family in the north." In the venue, everyone was shocked. Their eyes sparkled with disbelief as they looked at the people who stood up in disbelief. Jin Xinkue, the Jinda Real Estate's boss? Gu Changmin, the Dingshan Media's boss? Changshi's Ji family? Jingmen Island's Ouyang family? The famous Shun family in the north? At this moment, everyone's mind was shrouded in a thick fog. They never dreamed that things would turn out like this. Who was that young man? Who exactly was he? To think that he could make so many big bosses and families support him without hesitation? In the second row, the old man's expression turned extremely unsightly and disbelief could be seen in his eyes. He didn't expect such a situation to turn out like this. Suddenly, in the corner of the back row of the venue, a deep and resounding voice sounded. "This brother Tang on the auction stage is a sworn friend of mine, Miao Wenin. Whoever dares to go against him is the same as going against my Haiqing province's Miao family. If you want to play, then let's fight to the death." 10 seconds later, another voice sounded. "I may not know this little brother on the auction stage, but Miss Ouyang of Jingmen Island's Ouyang family is my sister-in-law. Whoever makes my sister-in-law unhappy will also make my imperial capital's Tang family unhappy. Haiqing Province's Miao family? Imperial capital's Tang family? In a flash, more than 200 guests in the auction venue were shocked by the identity of these two people and felt dizzy. The Haiqing Province's Miao family was still all right. Although their family was very powerful, the people present were not particularly afraid of them. But the imperial capital's Tang family was simply a behemoth. Who would dare to provoke them? On the auction stage, Tan Xiu didn't expect that Miao Wentong would also appear here. What surprised him the most was that Tang Wei was also here. He even sat in the last row in a low-key manner with only a beautiful girl accompanying him. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and said, "I'm very grateful for so many people's support. But today's matter can be solved by me alone. Please take a seat, everyone. I still have something to say." As everyone took their seats, Tan Xiu looked at the backstage and indifferently said, "I don't know who you are, but you should have seen what happened here. I hope you can stand up and answer some of my questions." In an instant, the venue turned deathly silent as everyone looked around, wanting to see who the person in charge of this auction was. Cough, cough. In the 10th row of the venue, an old man in a Chinese tunic suit and reading glasses stood up and said with a faint smile, "Little brother, your surname is Tang? Are you also from the imperial capital's Tang family?" "Who I am isn't important. What's important is how do I address you?" Tan Xiu said indifferently. The old man slowly left his seat and smilingly walked to the front of Tan Xiu on the auction stage. He carefully observed Tan Xiu a few times before replying with a smile, "My surname is Mei, Mei as in plum blossom. You can call me Old Mei." "How I address you is my own business," said Tan Xiu lightly. "You need to answer a few of my questions now. Else, you'll be out of luck, and so will the force behind you." The smile on the old man's face receded and he narrowed his eyes. "What if I don't believe you?" Tan Xiu took out his mobile and dialed a cell number. After his call was picked up, he said in a deep voice, "Something happened, Blue Starfish Mansion. I hope you can send someone to seal this place within half an hour. Also, block all communication signals here as fast as possible." "Understood." Duanmu Lin's deep voice came out of the phone. Tan Xiu hung up and looked at the old man whose expression slightly changed. He then shouted in a deep voice, "Come out, Hu Xiaoquan." Hu Xiaoquan had been sitting in the auction venue in a low-key manner among the crowd. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's shout, he knew Tan Xiu's identity and hurriedly got up. He forced a smile and said, "Tang, what's your order?" "Inform the Blue Starfish Mansion's security guards to seal off all the exits of this island for the time being," said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. "I'll give you the authority to kill anyone who dares to break through and leave." Hu Xiaoquan's expression changed and he hesitated. "That's not a good idea, is it? They're all—" "I don't give a damn who they are," said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. "Do as I say immediately if you don't want to be convicted of treason." "Treason? Treason?" Hu Xiaoquan shuddered. He didn't doubt Tan Xiu's ability. After all, he had the backing of the entire Tang family, and no one could predict what the Tang family could do. Immediately, he quickly grabbed his mobile, dialed a cell number and shouted in a deep voice, "Inform all the security guards to seal off the entire Blue Starfish Mansion. Block every exit on the island and don't let anyone leave. If anyone dares to break through, kill them." At this moment, everyone was shocked. The word treason from Tan Xiu made them shudder with fear, realizing that Tan Xiu's identity was probably very terrifying. Otherwise, the Blue Starfish Mansion's boss wouldn't be so afraid of him. Who was he? Who the hell was he? The old man in the second row suddenly got up and shouted, "Young man surnamed Tang, you've gone too far this time. If you could reveal your identity to us, we might be able to consider this matter." Chapter 1109. The roar of the helicopter came rolling from the sky. Everyone who was trapped in the auction venue had a lingering fear on their faces. It didn't take long for the auction venue's door to be kicked open as a large number of soldiers in military uniforms rushed in. What's going on? More than 200 participants of the auction did not expect that someone from the military would come. For a moment, They looked at Tang Xiu with eyes full of alarm and fear. That included the old man in the second row. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with shock. Bang, bang, bang. Amid the orderly footsteps, Zhu Long came in with 2 experts from the Special Abilities Bureau. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he came to the auction stage. After saluting, he said in a deep voice, "Reporting to Chief, Zhu Long is here to report. The chief is on the way here and will take about 40 minutes to get here." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Seal off the entire island. Monitor everything in the sky, underground, and underwater. Don't let even a fly escape." "Understood," Zhu Long replied and immediately rushed outside with his men. After a while, Old Mei came in with 5 or 6 strong men. He shook his head and forced a smile. "I can't find him. He seems to have disappeared into thin air." A cold light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes and he said in a deep voice, "The military quality of this man is good. He can actually avoid all the monitoring devices on the island and slip away unknowingly. But he can't run away as long as he's still in China." At the venue's seats, Ouyang Lulu stared at Tang Xiu in a daze. A glint flashed in her eyes. She never imagined that Tang Xiu would turn out to be someone from the State's Department. She had heard that Tang Xiu had done some things for the country before. But now, it seemed that her understanding of Tang Xiu was far from enough. However, his current appearance was really handsome. At the seat, apart from Grandma Ziying, only Miao Wentong knew that Tan Xiu had a national identity. Tang Wei, who had long known about Tan Xiu's identity but didn't expose Tan Xiu's identity, didn't expect that Tan Xiu was actually someone from the State Department. At this moment, he was completely in awe of his younger brother. Time flew by. When Duanmu Lin hurried over with a group of experts from the Special Abilities Bureau, the puzzled look on his face deepened when he saw the scene in the auction hall. He had always trusted Tan Xiu and believed that no matter what he did, he always had a sense of propriety. But the scene in front of him didn't seem like something big had happened. Duanmu Lin arrived in front of Tan Xiu. Just as he opened his mouth, he was stopped by Tan Xiu. After a while, when they came to the corner of the auction venue, Tan Xiu spoke in a deep voice, "Senior Duanmu, I need you to give me an explanation." Duanmu Lin forced a smile and said, "How did you end up like this? You still want to explain?" "What do you want me to explain to you?" Tan Xiu opened the yellow silk cloth covering the tray. When the arrow glider appeared in front of Duanmu Lin, he suddenly stared blankly and realized something in a flash. "How could this thing be here?" Duanmu Lin lowered his voice and hurriedly asked. "I came here to participate in the auction, but I didn't expect to see a arrow glider being auctioned here," said Tan Xiu. "I've called Kong Xia and she told me that there's no problem in the factory and that the security team is all our people. Also, I talked to the auction organizer and they said that the person who sent this arrow glider has a military aura." Duanmu Lin's pupils shrunk and he instantly shouted, "I'll definitely give you an explanation about this matter. Who's in charge of this auction?" "It's me." With a forced smile on his face, Old Mei slowly walked over from a distance and said, "Duanmu, I didn't expect that we would meet on such an occasion. It seems that it's very easy for you to make a living in the country." Duanmu Lin's mind was on Tan Xiu just now, so he didn't notice his old friend for a while. After seeing Old Mei, he furrowed his brows and asked, "Old Mei, are you the one who organized this auction?" "That's right." Old Mei nodded. "The kids at home are tossing and turning, so I came here to join in the fun since I had nothing to do. I didn't expect that I would get into trouble." Duanmu Lin glanced around and immediately lowered his voice. "Old Mei, we used to be old comrades in arms, so we know each other very well. Now tell me, where did you get this thing from?" "I've already told this little brother Tang everything," said Elder Mei. "It's really sent by someone. He has a military aura on him, and it's the aura of someone who has experienced a real war. I originally thought that he was a retired soldier, but I didn't expect that this matter might involve some secrets." Duanmu Lin was silent for a while and then slowly said, "Can you tell me what he looks like? Or do you have his photos or surveillance videos?" "We do," answered Old Mei. "No need to look for it." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "The boss here has just personally checked all the surveillance videos. All of them have been destroyed and the security guards in the monitoring room have been tied up and have been in a coma ever since. They haven't woken up until now. This is a very important matter, Tan Xiu, said Duan Mulin. Leave this matter to me. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this matter, said Duan Mulin. 3 days. I must get the news within 3 days. Tan Xiu nodded and said, after all, this is related to our cooperation. It's the magnificent Tang Corporation's responsibility to prevent the aeroglider from flowing to the outside world. I know what to do. Don't worry, said Duan Mulin with a solemn expression. More than 10 kilometers away. Inside a coastal building, Li Yuchuan put down the binoculars in his hand with a bitter expression on his dark face. He knew that he had caused a terrible disaster this time, but he didn't regret it. His heart was full of annoyance and unwillingness. The aeroglider he had spent a lot of effort to steal was not auctioned, and instead, his identity was exposed. Money. I need money. I'll get a lot of money even if I have to die. That damned bastard. I've killed him, but my wife and child are still in danger. Since I can't buy the aeroglider, I can only get it through other channels. Li Yuchuan loosened his clenched fists and strode toward the door. He needed to hurry up and leave this place, even avoiding the surveillance cameras everywhere in Shanghai. He knew that he didn't have much time left. At the Blue Starfish Mansion. In a magnificent hall, Tan Xiu, Gu Changmin, Jin Xingkui, Tang Wei, Miao Wenning, Grandma Ziying, Ji Mu, and the others were tasting the delicacies here and chatting about some topics after their reunion. Ouyang Lulu, who had a wild nature flowing in her bones, was like a docile kitten at the moment. She stayed at Tan Xiu's side and served him tea. Brother Miao, I didn't expect you to come to Shanghai. What a coincidence to bump into you here. I won't say many words of thanks for your help before. Come, let's drink, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Miao Wenong raised his glass and downed the wine with Tan Xiu. Then, he smilingly said, I didn't expect to bump into a busy man like you here. I came to Shanghai this time to prepare a project and look for partners. What project? Tan Xiu was surprised. Miao Wenong smiled and said, car sales. Miao Wenong smilingly said, our Miao Group's heavy industry factory produces a lot of cars. The order was originally from abroad, but something happened there, so it's been suppressed in our hands. At the side, Gu Changmin's expression shifted and he asked, Brother Miao, may I ask what kind of car models your Miao Group produces? We have all kinds of models, said Miao Wenong with a forced smile. Gu Changmin squinted his eyes and looked at Tan Xiu, asking, Brother Tang, do you have spare money in your hands? Why do you ask that, Brother Gu? Tan Xiu curiously asked. To tell you the truth, I'm also preparing a big project recently. I want to cooperate with you if you're interested, said Gu Changmin. Tell me about it, said Tan Xiu with a smile. I'm going to establish a logistics company, the largest logistics company in the country, said Gu Changmin. But I don't have much money in my hands at the moment, so I can only take out 6 billion yuan. I've asked a professional to estimate it. If I want to establish the most powerful logistics company in China, I'll need at least 30 billion yuan. That's why I'm afraid 30 billion yuan won't be enough. Logistics? I don't know much about logistics, said Tan Xiu with a frown. But the logistics companies in our country should be saturated by now, right? Especially those large logistics companies with networks all over the country. It seems that it's too late to get a share of the pie now. It's not too late. Gu Changmin shook his head. With e-commerce becoming more and more popular, online shopping has become a top priority. Although most of those e-commerce platforms have their own logistics networks, I can get a big piece of fat meat from their mouths as long as you cooperate with me. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he suddenly asked, Then, have you ever thought about doing an online shopping platform? Like those online shopping malls? Doing logistics, at the very least, must have products to deliver. It's better to deliver your own products than others. Of course, it would be even better if I can deliver others' products at the same time. Gu Changmin's eyes lit up and he said, I'm naturally willing to do an online shopping platform if you're willing to cooperate with me. In fact, if you trust me, I only need your investment and your reputation to complete the online shopping platform and logistics. You know me well. I'm indeed too lazy to manage business matters. Tan Xiao couldn't help laughing. Tell me, how much do you need me to invest? Miao Wentong didn't wait for Gu Changmin to answer Tan Xiao's question and smilingly said, Gentlemen, I'm also very interested in this business. How about I join? Chapter 11:10. Grandma Xing was a cultivator and an old woman, but she was a very capable person. The growth of her family in the north was inseparable from her efforts. She didn't have many thoughts while watching the conversation between these young people. But then she thought about how to establish a relationship with Tan Xiao, so she smilingly said, although I don't pay much attention to business matters now, there are too many people in my family who need to make a living. How about you count me in as well? Tan Xiao glanced at Miao Wentong and Grandma Ziying. He shrugged his shoulders and smilingly said, I don't really care about how many people cooperate with me in this matter. I naturally have no problem with it as long as Big Brother Gu agrees. Gu Changmin was excited. He already knew the identity of Miao Wentong and Grandma Ziying. Adding Tan Xiao to the equation, the four-way cooperation would definitely work. Even if the four forces joined hands, wouldn't they be able to easily surpass the largest online shopping platforms in the country, as well as several large logistics companies? Doing business. What was the capital to speak? Money. As long as you had money, you could do it. And as long as you had enough money, you could make a name for yourself. With the four-way cooperation, you would have money and power, so why would you worry about not making money from your investment? Jin Xingkue pursed his lips and felt quite helpless inwardly. Most of his money had been invested in the newly developed real estate projects. Although he would be able to get back a large sum of money after half a year, he really didn't have the ability to meddle in it for now. Therefore, even if he realized that this was a project that would definitely make money, he was quite regretful that he didn't have the ability to do so. Suddenly, Mu let out a dry smile and said, Everyone, old brothers, can you take me along since you want to play? My family may not have much money, but it's still possible to hitch a ride with you, old brothers. The Ji family of Changshi City doesn't have much money? Gu Changmin couldn't help but roll his eyes. Although he had 10 to 20 billion in assets, it was nothing compared to the Ji family of Changshi City. The Ji family was a famous family in Changshi City with countless wealth. Even if it was less than 100 billion, it was at least 80 billion. However, he realized a problem and asked, Brother Ji, if your Ji family wants to join, then I will naturally raise both hands in approval. After all, you and Brother Tang are friends, so I naturally have no problem as long as he trusts you. However, can you make the decision for such a big matter? Although my father is still the patriarch of the Ji family, most of the power of the Ji family has been handed over to me. To put it bluntly, I now have the right to be the master of the entire Ji family. Gu Changmin rubbed his hands and excitedly said, That's great. As long as the 5 clans work together and each clan puts in some effort, we'll be able to reap a decent harvest. How about this? Let's discuss it in detail. A chance encounter turned into a business investment cooperation forum. Tan Xiao didn't expect this, and neither did the others. However, naturally, no one would push away businesses that could make money. After negotiations, the 5 companies decided to invest 10 billion each, with a total investment of 50 billion for this project. Although Gu Changmin couldn't come up with so much money for the time being, he was still willing to take a loan from the bank to raise 10 billion. As the preliminary cooperation intention was reached, Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, All right, since we've talked about it, I won't care about the business. I'll tell Kong Xia about the content we discussed today. As for the specific operation, let her handle it. Due to the time constraint, everyone asked for a guest room in the Blue Starfish Mansion after the discussion and prepared to rest for the night before leaving. However, Ji Mu didn't immediately go to rest even though he had asked for a guest room. He stayed beside Tan Xiao and watched the others leave. Is there anything else? Tan Xiao gave Ouyang Lulu a look. As Ouyang Lulu walked toward the direction of the guest room, Tan Xiao asked, Do you have some time recently, Brother Tang? Ji Mu nodded. I'm going to marry my girlfriend, and I hope you can attend it when the time comes. Your wedding date has been delayed until now. Tan Xiu was surprised. It wasn't supposed to be delayed until now, said Ji Mu with a forced smile. But something happened to the child, so it's been delayed. What happened? Tan Xiu's expression moved and asked. Ji Mu shook his head without a word and helplessly said, "Forget it. The child is gone anyway. I've been accompanying her recently and her mood has improved a lot. Brother Tang, you haven't told me if you have some time recently." "What date are you going to hold it?" asked Tan Xiu. "The first day of next month," answered Ji Mu. Tan Xiu calculated the time and said, "There are still more than 10 days before the first day of next month, and I don't know if I have anything to do after that. But if there's nothing important, I'll definitely go to Changxi myself. If I have something to do, I'll send someone to deliver the gift. Please don't mind it if that happens." A smile immediately appeared on Ji Mu's face upon hearing it. He nodded and said, "I understand. I won't mind it." Shortly after, Ji Mu returned to his room. Tan Xiu took out a half-pack of cigarettes from his interspatial ring and lit one up. He didn't hurry to go back to his room to rest but stood in the corridor and looked at the building where the auction venue was located. The building was still brightly lit and there was no news coming. As a matter of fact, Tan Xiu felt relieved after figuring out that it was the problem with the military. He didn't need to give Duanmu Lin an explanation as long as it was not the magnificent Tang Corporation. Not only did the aeroglider not affect him, but it also brought him some benefits instead. At the very least, the aeroglider manufactured by the magnificent Tang Corporation had been known by some wealthy businessmen and celebrities. When this product was sold to the public, some of them would jump out to support it. "Aren't you going to rest?" Half an hour later, Ouyang Lulu came out of her room and came to Tan Xiu's side and asked softly, "No need to rush." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "There's no news from the auction venue, so I can't be 100% assured." "As a matter of fact, you don't need to worry about anything as long as it's not the magnificent Tang Corporation," said Ouyang Lulu. "On the contrary, Duanmu Lin will have to give you an explanation if there's a problem with the military. I know you're smart, but I didn't expect you to be able to see through this matter." Tan Xiu smiled. "I hope Duanmu Lin can figure out the truth of the matter as soon as possible, else I won't feel at ease. If you're still worried, why don't you go there and see the situation?" Ouyang Lulu chuckled. "I understand what you mean." Tan Xiu shook his head. "Duanmu Lin won't put the shit on our heads if there's a problem with the military." Just as Ouyang Lulu was about to speak, her expression suddenly shifted. She looked at a group of people coming from the distance and her eyes finally landed on Duanmu Lin. "It seems there's a result." Tan Xiu nodded indifferently and calmly waited for Duanmu Lin to come with a group of people. Then he asked, "Senior Duanmu, have you investigated the matter?" Duanmu Lin's expression turned a bit ugly. He nodded and said, "Let's find a quiet room to talk." "All right." Tan Xiu led Duanmu Lin and the others to the hall where he had a drink with Miao Wenang and the others. The place was very clean since the attendants had cleaned it. After taking a seat, Duanmu Lin forced a smile and said, "I've investigated it thoroughly, Tan Xiu. There's indeed a problem with the military. I've communicated with the military and learned that a retired officer named Li Yuchuan stole a aeroglider from the military warehouse due to some special reasons. I checked the serial number and found that it's the aeroglider that appeared in this auction." "May I know what the special reason is?" asked Tan Xiu. "It's hard for me to talk about the open and covert struggles in the army," said Duanmu Lin with a forced smile. "Forget it. You don't need to ask about it. I've already issued a nationwide warrant to arrest Li Yuchuan. The intelligence network of the intelligence department has also been fully activated. We'll definitely catch him in the shortest time possible." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "This incident also gave me a wake-up call. It seems that the security of the magnificent Tang Corporation needs to be further strengthened. Senior Duanmu, I happen to be free recently, so I'll set up a security company. What do you think?" "A security company?" Duanmu Lin felt a bit helpless inwardly. Tan Xiu's power was already big enough, and it would be like adding wings to a tiger if he were to set up a security company. Many things that were inconvenient for cultivators could be handed over to the security company. Should he disagree? He found that he really didn't dare to disagree. After all, the other party's point of entry was very precise. If he didn't agree and the flying discs produced by the magnificent Tang Corporation were to leak out later, it would have nothing to do with Tang Xiu at that time. Tang Xiu wouldn't have to bear any responsibility after the accident happened if he didn't agree to set up a security company. Do whatever you want, Tang Xiu. I'll inform them about the procedures needed to set up the security company, said Duanmu Lin with a nod. Thank you, Senior Duanmu. Tang Xiu smiled and said, don't hesitate to call me if you need me to do anything in the future. I'm duty-bound for the peace and stability of Huaxia. Duanmu Lin got up and said, I'll be able to sleep soundly after hearing your words. Anyways, I won't disturb your rest anymore. This matter will come to an end after we catch that Li Yuchuan. Tan Xiu also got up and asked, I have one last question, Senior Duanmu. What is it? Asked Duanmu Lin. How did you deal with those wealthy businessmen and celebrities who participated in the auction? Asked Tan Xiu. What else can I do? Duanmu Lin forced a wry smile. They just participated in the auction and didn't violate any laws. I can't act recklessly even if I have the Shangfang sword. They have all signed confidentiality agreements, and I'll send some people to keep an eye on them. Anyone who dares to disclose anything about the aeroglider will be charged with treason and sentenced to death. Chapter 1111. Magic City. Outside a high-end shop in the most prosperous neighborhood of the Redwood District, Li Yuchuan, dressed in a black leather coat, raised his hand to press down on the brim of his cap. His eyes were fixed on the shop's plaque. The golden characters were particularly dazzling under the reflection of the distant lights. God's Nectar number 00006. God's Nectar. The best wine produced by the magnificent Tang Corporation was absolutely the king of wines, and no other wine in history could compare with it. But the price of God's Nectar was also very expensive, with the price of a bottle starting from 5 digits. Li Yuchuan had drunk God's Nectar before. It was his old chief who got 2 bottles through some unknown channels. As for him and his team members, because they had completed an outstanding mission, they were rewarded. The 7 of them drank a bottle together. From that moment on, he dreamed of drinking God's Nectar again. The situation of the auction made him very clear that it was impossible for him to get auction funds from the auction organizer. He was in urgent need of money. So after thinking it over and over again, he made a serious judgment and finally set his eyes on the God's Nectar exclusive store. Before he gave the aeroglider to the auction house, he had actually left a way out for himself, which was to ransack the God's Nectar exclusive store. It would be best if he could get the money. But if he couldn't get the money, he could directly get a batch of God's Nectar and leave. As long as he had God's Nectar in his hands, he believed that countless rich people who loved wine would scramble to buy it. A few minutes later, Li Yuchuan quietly came to the back of the shop. After observing the alley for a while, his vigorous figure instantly sprinted and quickly appeared at the window on the 2nd floor. A sharp blade appeared in his hand, and he easily opened the window lock that was locked from the inside. The batch of God's Nectar that arrived yesterday is definitely not sold out. Generally, this kind of shop will reserve the next batch of wine in case of special circumstances. As for the cash truck that came this afternoon, it shouldn't have taken away all the money in the shop. 2 million. I must get 2 million. After entering the room on the 2nd floor, Li Yuchuan looked around and found that it was a storage room with some sundries. He quietly came to the door, opened it a crack, and looked outside. After observing, he found that there was no one in the corridor outside, and the entire interior of the shop was dark. Immediately after, he flashed out. However, he didn't notice that a dark shadow had silently entered the room from the window he had just sneaked in and had quietly followed him. Observe and seek. Soon, Li Yuchuan found 60 boxes of God's Nectar stored on the 2nd floor. The wine boxes had not been opened and were neatly placed against the wall. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not directly steal the wine, so after searching for a while, he found the office on the 2nd floor. The safe is really well hidden. Li Yuchuan found the safe behind the painting hanging on the wall behind a row of bookshelves. He was definitely an expert in opening safes. After he inserted a bent iron wire into the safe, the first lock was quickly opened. Then he used other methods to solve the fingerprint verification and digital password. Finally, the safe door slowly opened. This money. Li Yuchuan took a few glances and found that the cash in the safe was about 300,000 yuan, which was 1.7 million yuan short of the 2 million he needed. Alas, it seems that I can only steal some God's nectar. 10 boxes of God's nectar should be enough. However, the car I got could hold 10 boxes of God's nectar, but it would be difficult to get it out of Shanghai smoothly. I'm afraid it'll be easy to find out if I sell it in Shanghai, Li Yuchuan sighed and muttered to himself. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind him. Don't waste your effort since it won't be easy to get it out of Shanghai. Who's there? Li Yuchuan felt goosebumps all over his body. He drew a sharp Mitsubishi Army knife from his waist and turned around. In the dimly lit room, he could clearly see the middle-aged man leaning against the door. It's the security guard of this shop. A faint smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face. He should be rewarded for catching a powerful thief, right? He wasn't like the Tang sect's inner court disciples who could easily buy medicinal pills from the sect. A few days ago, he had to spend a lot of effort to beg an inner court disciple for help and used all his money to buy medicinal pills. The current him could be said to be as poor as a church mouse. Li Yuchuan crossed the Mitsubishi Army knife in front of his chest and coldly said, I don't want to hurt or kill anyone. But I'm in urgent need of money, so I hope you won't stop me or resist me. I'll just tie you up and the shop staff will naturally untie you tomorrow morning. When Liang squinted his eyes and lightly smiled. If my guess is correct, you should be a soldier, right? Besides, you should have just left the army not long ago, yet your military aura hasn't been polished by ordinary life. Forget it, I can let you go tonight considering that I'm also a soldier. But you must promise me that you won't steal from now on. Li Yuchuan stared blankly for a moment and then coldly said, I need money. I need a lot of money in the shortest time, and this is one of the best ways. Do you think you can handle me? Is it that difficult to handle you? Asked Wen Liang with a smile. I'm too lazy to waste my breath with you. Just give up and let me tie you up or be subdued. Li Yuchuan sneered. Bring it on. When Liang hooked his finger and smilingly said, snorting coldly, Li Yuchuan moved lightning fast and dashed to the front of Wen Liang in an instant. As the Mitsubishi Army knife stabbed toward Wen Liang's shoulder, his other fist also punched out. Military jab fist? You're from the Blue Eagle Special Force? Wen Liang dodged the Mitsubishi Army knife and punched Li Yuchuan. His body remained motionless, but Li Yuchuan retreated 4 or 5 steps back and asked in surprise. Li Yuchuan's pupils constricted and a look of disbelief burst out of his eyes. He felt as if his fist had struck a hard rock. The piercing pain in his fist bones made him feel a chill in his heart. He didn't continue to attack and instead looked at Wen Liang with vigilance and shouted in a deep voice, Who the hell are you? Only a few people know about the military jab fist. It's a unique move of the Blue Eagle Special Force. How do you know about it? Because I used to be a member of the Blue Eagle Special Force, said Wen Liang lightly. That's impossible. Li Yuchuan angrily retorted. I served in the Blue Eagle Special Force for 4 years and was its captain. I've never seen you before. No, that's not right. Your age, it turns out that you're a former member. But how did you become a security guard? Is it shameful to be a security guard? Asked Wen Liang. I'm afraid that countless people want to fight for this security guard position, yet they can't get it. But you, an elite from the Blue Eagle Special Force, actually did such a dirty thing. You're a disgrace to the Blue Eagle Special Force. Li Yuchuan's face was burning and he felt too ashamed to show his face. He wanted to defend himself, but the words were swallowed back into his stomach. I'm short on money. Li Yuchuan forced himself to speak out. There are plenty of people who are short on money, but they won't go so far as to steal, sneered Wen Liang. Let me tell you something. The surveillance cameras have been recording you ever since you appeared outside the store. Even when you sneaked into the store, it was all within their range. That's why I was willing to let you go just now, because I was prepared to delete the surveillance footage. But now that you actually attacked me and even took out a Mitsubishi Army knife, there's no way I'll let you go again. I respect you as a former member of the team and I really don't want to fight you again, said Liu Chuan coldly. But I really need money, so I can only apologize. When Liang's brows pricked and his figure instantly appeared in front of Liu Chuan. A lightning-fast punch landed on Liu Chuan's chest, followed by a swift whip kick to his face. After knocking him down to the ground, he followed up and directly restrained him. Then he pulled a rope over, tied Liu Chuan up, and threw him into a corner. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me why you came here to steal. Don't use the lack of money as an excuse. Even if you want to explain, you must tell me why you're short on money. Liu Chuan was scared stiff at the moment. He was very confident in his own strength, especially in fighting. He had won the championship of the entire military competition and was definitely the king of fighting in the hearts of countless people. Yet he didn't even have the strength to fight back against this middle-aged man in front of him and was subdued. How was this possible? Could it be? The former members of the Blue Eagle Special Combat Squad all had such terrifying fighting prowess? Liu Chuan was silent for a few minutes before he gritted his teeth and spoke with an unwilling expression. I need money to save my wife and child. Save your wife and child? Sneered Wen Liang. You need 2 million? Liu Chuan was aghast. You've been following me since the moment I came in? That's right. Wen Liang nodded. I really can't believe that the Blue Eagle Special Combat Squad will let you go given your strength. Liu Chuan said with a respectful expression. That's right. I really need 2 million because I don't have much time left. As long as I get 2 million and give it to that bastard, he'll release my wife and child. Who's that bastard? Asked Wen Liang with a frown. Chang Zhao, Chang Guoxin's nephew, answered Liu Chuan. A glint flashed in Wen Liang's eyes and he slowly said, Chang Guoxin. He used to be a senior colonel, so he should have general stars on his shoulders now, right? His nephew shouldn't be a member of the military. But I'm very curious why his nephew wants to capture your wife and child and even want you to pay 2 million to ransom them. I'm just a victim in the factional struggle, said Liu Chuan coldly. Wen Liang nodded and took out his mobile phone to dial a number. After the call was connected, he said, Captain, there's a special situation at God's Nectar Store 00006. I need you to come here. Chapter 11-12. Firmly tied up, Liu Chuan naturally heard what Wen Liang said on the phone. If he was shocked by Wen Liang's strength just now, then the word, Captain, coming out of Wen Liang's mouth at this moment was enough to set off a storm in his heart. Who is it? Given this middle-aged man's strength, who else is qualified to be his captain? Liu Chuan suddenly realized that he seemed to have fallen into a huge whirlpool, and this whirlpool was either a meat grinder or an opportunity for him. After watching Wen Liang hang up the phone, he asked again, Who exactly are you? You're not qualified to know who I am, said Wen Liang with a faint smile. Someone will come to pick you up soon, so I hope you're lucky enough to keep your life. Liu Chuan took a deep breath and said, I know what kind of ending I'll face next. It's nothing but death. But before I die, can I ask you for a favor? I know what you want to ask of me. Wen Liang shook his head indifferently. But I'm sorry. I have my duty, so I can't save your family. Instantly, Liu Chuan's face turned ashen and intense despair filled his heart. However, he was unwilling to give up. Even if he couldn't kill the bastard who kidnapped his wife and child, he still hoped that his wife and child could be safe and sound. With this unwillingness, he almost begged, We're both members of the Blue Eagle Special Force, so you're also my senior. I know stealing is wrong, but I really have no other way. It's actually very easy for you to get 2 million yuan with your skill. You don't need to come here. Wen Liang shook his head. I just don't get it. Why do you keep emphasizing that you don't have time? Are you afraid that Chang Zhao will kill the hostage? Or that your family will die? Chang Zhao won't kill the hostage anytime soon, said Liu Chuan with a bitter smile. I'm the one he wants to clean up. The reason why he asked for 2 million yuan is that he wants to destroy me mentally. I just emphasize that I don't have time because I've done something even worse. You killed someone? Asked Wen Liang with a faint smile. It's more serious than killing someone. Li Yuchuan shook his head. Wen Liang revealed a surprised expression and said, "Tell me about it. If your answer can surprise me, I can plead with the captain for you. Maybe the captain will be kind enough to let you go." Li Yuchuan's eyes lit up, but they immediately dimmed down. He shook his head and said, "I can't tell you. Only death awaits me once I do. Senior, I, Li Yuchuan, rarely ask for help in my life, but I'm begging you. Help me save my wife and child. If there's an afterlife, I, Li Yuchuan, am willing to repay your kindness even if I have to work like an ox or a horse." Wen Liang said, "As I said, I have my duty. I absolutely don't have time to help you save people. Of course, when you see the captain later, you can beg him. If he agrees, I can help." "Who is your captain?" asked Li Yuchuan hurriedly. Wen Liang shook his head and said, "The captain's identity is also not something you can understand. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't ask questions like, 'Who are you?' because knowing it won't do you any good. Instead, it will speed up your death." Mysterious organization? Li Yuchuan suddenly realized the situation, and the way he looked at Wen Liang was completely different from before. 20 minutes later, the door was pushed open from the outside as a burly middle-aged man with a grim expression came inside. His expression slightly moved when he saw Li Yuchuan inside. "You?" Li Yuchuan's pupils suddenly shrunk after seeing the newcomer, and a horrified look appeared on his face. He simply couldn't believe his eyes. The man he once thought to be dead had now appeared in front of him intact and unscathed. Furthermore, he should be the one Wen Liang addressed as captain. What the hell is going on here? How could the former soul of the army, the iron-blooded king of the army, appear here? Wolf Head, who had just been transferred back to China to receive orders to assist Jinshi in establishing the country's intelligence network, faintly glanced at Wen Liang after seeing the tied-up Li Yuchuan and said, "You've given me some trouble." "What kind of trouble?" asked Wen Liang, confused. "He knows me. We're old acquaintances." Wolf Head coldly snorted. "Am I right, Yuchuan brat?" Wolf Head snorted coldly. Li Yuchuan's lips squirmed and he said in a trembling voice, "Wolf? No, instructor, didn't you die while carrying out a mission abroad?" "That's just what the military said." Wolf Head shook his head. "I actually left the army long ago. On the other hand, why are you here?" "He snuck in to steal things, Captain," said Wen Liang. "I caught him on the spot. Since he's your old acquaintance, in order to not expose your identity, I'll just kill him now and destroy his corpse to get rid of the evidence." Wolf Head stopped Wen Liang and incredulously looked at Li Yuchuan. "You actually stole things? And you even came here to steal things?" "I need money. My wife and children were kidnapped, so I need 2 million to ransom them," said Li Yuchuan bitterly. Wolf Head was silent for a moment and rubbed his temples, feeling a bit of a headache. His current identity needed to be kept absolutely confidential, yet Li Yuchuan had recognized him. He really didn't know what to do unless he killed him. Stealing things. It was just a trivial matter and he could at most teach him a lesson. However, his identity was likely to be exposed if he let Li Yuchuan go. He didn't want to bear such a result, and he believed that Sect Master Tan Xiu didn't want to see it either. Wolf Head took out a lighter and a cigarette. A sharp dagger shot out and cut the rope tying Li Yuchuan's body. He lit the cigarette and took a few deep puffs, saying, "I'll make a call first." At the Blue Starfish Mansion. Tan Xiu, who had just fallen asleep, was disturbed by his mobile phone's ringtone. He looked at the caller ID and picked it up, asking, "What's up, Wolf Head?" "There's an accident, Sect Master. My identity was discovered by an old acquaintance, and I've already met him." Wolf Head's bitter laughter came out of the phone. "Do you still need to report this to me?" Tan Xiu lightly said. "Just gag him with your method. If you can't do it, just get rid of him." Wolf Head forced a wry smile and said, "Sect Master, he used to be my cadet in the army. He's also a vanguard that I was very optimistic about. I really can't do it if I want to kill him. Also, The current situation is a bit special. He's in our God's Nectar exclusive store, number 00006. How come he's there? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. He came here to steal things and was caught by Wen Liang on the spot, said Wolfhead. He was once a vanguard in the army? Asked Tan Xiu with a strange expression. A member you're optimistic about actually stole things? And he even stole from us? Li Yuchuan's family was kidnapped, so he needs a large sum of money to redeem them, said Wolfhead. That's why he accidentally stole from our exclusive store. How do you want to solve this matter, Sect Master? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then slowly said, You have two choices. First, you completely gag his mouth, no matter what method you use. Second, you go back to Nine Dragons Island to be punished. You're not allowed to step out of the island for 10 years. After saying that, Tan Xiu directly hung up the phone. A bit of anger appeared on his handsome face as he threw the phone on the bedside table and lay down again. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression slightly changed and a name came to his mind. Li Yuchuan? In a flash, Tan Xiu took out his mobile again, dialed Wolfhead's cell number and quickly asked, What's the name of the man you just caught, Wolfhead? Li Yuchuan. Wolfhead felt a bit bitter inwardly. Just as he was hesitating, he received a call from Tan Xiu and respectfully answered Tan Xiu's question. Li Yuchuan? Asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. He's from the army? He retired this year? Wolfhead walked into the room and asked Li Yuchuan. Then he took the phone and said, Yes, he just retired this year. It hasn't been that long. Ask him now, did he steal the arrow glider from the army? Asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Wolfhead didn't know what the arrow glider was, but he still followed Tan Xiu's order and looked at Li Yuchuan asking, Answer my question. Did you steal the arrow glider from the army? The arrow glider? Li Yuchuan was shaken inwardly and despair filled his heart. He knew that he had been completely exposed, and his only hope now was to ask Wolfhead to save his wife and child. Therefore, he nodded and said, Yes, I stole it. I also entrusted the auction organizer of the Blue Starfish Mansion to auction it off. Tan Xiu, who was holding the phone, naturally heard Li Yuchuan's answer. He was at a loss whether to cry or laugh at the moment. Duanmu Lin was desperately searching for Li Yuchuan's whereabouts, yet he didn't expect that the man would fall into the hands of his men. The funniest thing was that he was caught by his men because he stole the property from the God's Nectar store. Was his family kidnapped? Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and listened to Wolfhead's report on the phone. All kinds of thoughts were churning inside his mind. He was unwilling to hand Li Yuchuan over to Duanmu Lin directly because Duanmu Lin had already activated too many channels to capture Li Yuchuan. If he found Li Yuchuan one step ahead of Duanmu Lin would definitely suspect that his intelligence network was even better than the country's. Duanmu Lin wouldn't do anything to him even if he was afraid of him since he was strong. But once Duanmu Lin realized that he had a terrifying intelligence network, his fear of him would greatly increase. He might even use all his power to investigate his intelligence network, just like how he dealt with the Darkwind organization. He might even make some bad moves. After a long while, Wolfhead, escort Li Yuchuan to the Blue Star Villa complex in secret, ordered Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Keep in mind that China's intelligence network is now searching for his whereabouts. You must do it secretly. Understood? Chapter 11:13. Tan Xiu hung up and looked at Ouyang Lulu, who was staring at him with wide eyes. He forced a wry smile and said, You've heard the conversation just now. I have to get away and take care of this myself. Lulu, you stay here. I'll go to the Paradise Manor to find you after I'm done with this matter. Why didn't you give Li Yuchuan to Duanmu Lin? Asked Ouyang Lulu curiously. Tan Xiu explained his concerns to Ouyang Lulu. He looked at her expression and finally said, The most important thing now is to make Li Yuchuan shut his mouth. Whether it's me or Duanmu Lin, this is the reason why we're looking for him. I must go there myself to feel relieved. Realizing the seriousness of this matter, Ouyang Lulu said, I'll go with you. Otherwise, if you suddenly leave and leave me here, it will arouse Duanmu Lin's curiosity. All right, but you can't go back to the Blue Star Villa complex with me. Tan Xiu thought for a while and said, I don't want you to get involved in this matter. You can go back to the Blue Star Villa complex directly after we leave this place, said Ouyang Lulu with a smile. I'll go back to the Paradise Manor and wait for you there. Tan Xiu felt a bit sorry for Ouyang Lulu since he didn't know whether Mu Weining would return to the Blue Star Villa complex to rest at night or not. If she was there and he rashly took Ouyang Lulu back, it would be a headache for him. Number 00006 God's Nectar Exclusive Store. After Wolf had hung up the phone, he looked at Li Yuchuan and said, If my guess is correct, my boss should be able to rescue your wife and child. But you must come with me to see him in person. Your boss? Li Yuchuan's mouth twitched a few times and the shock inwardly became more intense. Never did he expect that someone would be able to take Wolfhead for his own use given his personality and strength. Moreover, Wolfhead's appearance showed that he was very respectful toward his boss. He wanted to ask Wolfhead who this boss was, but he recalled Wen Liang's warning to him before. He could only suppress his strong curiosity and nodded, As long as I can save my wife and child, I'm willing to do it even if you directly kill me afterward. Wolfhead patted his shoulder and said, You're a man, and I can see that you have difficulties. Let's go. When the time comes, tell my boss everything about you. He is a reasonable person and will make arrangements. At 1 a.m., when Tang Xiu returned to Blue Star Villa Complex, he saw Wolfhead and Li Yuchuan inside the conference room. His eyes lingered on Li Yuchuan a few times before he lightly said, You're Li Yuchuan, right? You're the one who stole the flying disc from the army? The one who stole the flying disc from the army? Anyhow, I'm very curious about where you got the courage from. Boss, Xiu said, and you, flying. How did you manage to steal it? I used to be a member of the Blue Eagle Special Force, and I was even its captain, said Li Yuchuan. Because of the power struggle between the higher-ups, I was framed and became a victim. My superior's enemy had won the game, so he instructed his nephew outside to make me suffer miserably. That's why his nephew kidnapped my wife and child and demanded me to pay $2 million for ransom. Tan Xiu frowned and said, You can redeem him for $2 million? The probability is only 1%, maybe less than 1%, said Li Yuchuan bitterly. But I need to know where my wife and child are. If they don't let me go, I'll take them by force. If I were to fight with experts from other countries, I might be a little afraid, but I'm still confident that I can easily take care of those who kidnapped my wife and child. Tan Xiu said, It's a pity that you won't have the chance, because the National Intelligence Network has been completely spread out. Now they are searching for you all over the world. Once they find you, they will arrest you, and it's very likely that they will kill you on the spot. Li Yuchuan nodded and said, I understand what you just said, but I have to gamble. It's just that I didn't expect to lose so miserably. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, Actually, it's not up to you to decide whether you win or lose. I can help you if you can promise me something. Li Yuchuan's eyes lit up. What he was looking forward to the most was a promise, so he resolutely said, I'll promise you anything as long as you can help me rescue my wife and child, including my life. I won't even frown if you want to kill me. A corpse is useless to me, said Tan Xiu indifferently. I can save your wife and child. I guarantee you that I can rescue them as long as they're still alive. My condition is that once I rescue your wife and child, you must take the initiative to expose your whereabouts and let the country's people find you. You'll walk right into a trap. That's it. Li Yuchuan was dumbfounded. What kind of condition was that? He could directly hand him over to the people who captured him if he wanted to. I haven't finished yet, said Tan Xiu. You must never tell anyone that you've seen me after you walk right into the trap, let alone Wolfhead and the God's Nectar exclusive store. I give you my word, said Li Yuchuan without hesitation. Tan Xiu nodded and said, Only death will await you once you walk right into the trap. However, I may be able to save your life if I come forward. I'll follow your instructions, said Li Yuchuan respectfully. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and stretched out a finger, asking, I'll ask you one last question. You must answer honestly without any concealment. Please ask, replied Li Yuchuan solemnly. Did you tell anyone else about the arrow glider aside from the auction organizer? Asked Tan Xiu. Li Yuchuan shook his head. I spent a lot of effort to find out about the Blue Starfish Mansion's auction just to get rid of the arrow glider. The arrow glider is too important that I didn't dare to tell anyone else. I didn't even tell them all the functions of the arrow glider when I told the auction house about it. Tan Xiu already knew about this matter, so he nodded and said, "Okay, that's it then. Tell me where your wife and children are being held, or how to contact them." "I have a mobile phone with me," said Li Yuchuan. "He told me to call the only number on the phone once I've collected enough money. I don't know where they are, though." Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "Call them immediately and tell them you've collected the money. Then ask them where the transaction is." Li Yuchuan dialed the number according to Tan Xiu's instructions, but nobody answered. He dialed the number 4 or 5 times in a row, but nobody answered in the end. The other party is probably sleeping at this time. Since you can't get through now, then just wait. Rest here tonight and contact them first thing in the morning, ordered Tan Xiu. After settling Li Yuchuan down, Tan Xiu took Wolfhead to his study. As the two men lit up cigarettes, Tan Xiu sighed and said, "There are fights wherever there are people. It seems that the struggle for power in the military is even more intense. Given Li Yuchuan's ability, he can still solve a lot of problems for the country if he continues to stay in the army and carry out missions that many people can't. It's a pity that he's such a capable soldier." "I've been there before, Sect Master, so I naturally know the situation inside," sneered Wolfhead. "Li Yuchuan is actually very pitiful, but the other party is very hateful. As the saying goes, one should not bring misfortune to one's wife and children. But the other party even kidnapped Li Yuchuan's wife and children. This is really despicable." "Maybe they're trying to make an example out of him," said Tan Xiu lightly. "Do you really want to save Li Yuchuan's life, Sect Master?" asked Wolfhead hesitantly. "Li Yuchuan is now in despair," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "He'll give his life to the other party once he gets such a person for his own use. Furthermore, he's also a talented person. He's likely to become a great person in the future if he's nurtured well." "Thank you, Sect Master," said Wolfhead gratefully. "No need to thank me." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "I won't stand idly by even if I met an ordinary person whose wife and children were kidnapped. It's just that I'm afraid I'll have to ask Duan Mulin for a favor because of this Li Yuchuan. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for the time being. What's the progress of Jean Shi's intelligence network preparation?" "I just came here less than a week ago, so I don't know the specifics," said Wolfhead respectfully. "But one thing is certain. He has bought a lot of people in the southern part of China and has laid out a basic layout." Chapter 11:14. As the saying goes, collective strength is like steel, and everyone's wisdom is like the sun and the moon. Tan Xiu had experienced thousands of years, so how could he not understand the meaning of this sentence? 1 was alone, 2 were powerful, and 3 could make the river move. The enemies he would have to face in the future were all supremes in the immortal world with monstrous strength and a large number of powerhouses in their hands. If he were to face them alone, even if he were to return to his former peak cultivation, it would still be very difficult for him to kill all the enemies. However, if he had more subordinates and cultivated a large number of powerhouses, it would be much easier for him to take revenge in the future. For example, if those enemies had tens of thousands of powerhouses as subordinates, then he must have tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of subordinates. Ants may be small, but countless of them could still bite an elephant to death. Tan Xiu immediately adopted Wolfhead's suggestion and decided to recruit a group of subordinates with prominent identities. After all, to build a team on Earth was naturally inseparable from money, power, and influence in all aspects. However, he needed to think carefully about who would be the most suitable person to do this. After all, this kind of thing had to be kept secret. Not even the slightest bit of information could be leaked. Wolfhead looked at Tan Xiu's thoughtful expression and knew that Tan Xiu was considering his suggestion. After hesitating for a while, he said in a low voice, "Sect Master, this matter doesn't need to be rushed for a while. If we want to select people with clean and prominent identities, we need the in-depth cooperation of the intelligence network. The intelligence network we've set up is just in its embryonic form, so the top priority is still the intelligence network. Once our intelligence network is completely laid out, it will be the most suitable time to do this. What you said makes sense, but you've also overlooked some issues. Tan Xiu nodded. Laying out an intelligence network is not only to be built at the bottom of society, but also requires people at all levels, from all walks of life, and with distinct identities. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to get their hands on some high-level information. Only the rich, famous, and powerful people would be able to get their hands on it. Notify Jin Shi to immediately rush to Demonic City. I'll arrange for him to handle this matter. Upon hearing this, Wolfhead respectfully nodded and said, I'll notify him right away. At this moment, Wolfhead thoroughly understood that his way of thinking was too narrow, and there was also a problem with the way he looked at the problem. Where did this information come from? Naturally, it came from the intelligence agents. If they only trained intelligence agents among ordinary people, there were indeed many circles and many levels of intelligence that could not be obtained. In the early morning, an ordinary Buick sedan drove into the Blue Star Villa complex. As the two young men hurried into the villa where Tan Xiu lived, they soon saw Tan Xiu eating breakfast. Boss. The two of them looked at Mu Weining, who was eating with Tan Xiu, and greeted her respectfully. There's no need to hide any information from Weining in the future, said Tan Xiu lightly. Tell me, what's the result of the information I asked you to investigate last night? A young man took out a stack of documents from his briefcase and handed it to Tan Xiu, saying, Chang Guoxin, a major general of the southern military region, the most powerful figure in the Chang family in the imperial capital and the patriarch of the Chang family. Their backer was the imperial capital's Tang family. This time, it could be said that the Tang family had won the game in the Southern Army. According to reliable sources, Chang Guoxin is likely to advance further in the near future, adding another star on his shoulder. Chang Zhao is Chang Guoxin's nephew. Since Chang Guoxin has no biological son, he raised Chang Zhao as his own. It's a pity that Chang Zhao isn't a soldier material, so he relied on his uncle's relationship and the company established by his father to commit a lot of atrocious things over the years. I'll look at the information myself later, interrupted Tan Xiu. What I want to know is where Li Yuchuan's wife and son are now. At the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs, answered the young man. Tan Xiu thought for a while and shook his head. A rat's droppings spoil a pot of soup. Chang Guoxin was cultivated by the Tang family, so he's one of us. But this nephew of his is not a good person. It seems he needs to be taught a lesson. After waving his hand to order the two intelligence agents to leave, Tan Xiu accompanied Mu Weining to finish the rest of the breakfast. Then he wiped the corner of his mouth and smilingly said, I have something to do today, so you can busy yourself. Also, I'll probably be very busy for some time. I'm afraid I'll have to travel all over the country, so I won't have much time to accompany you. I know you're a busy man, said Mu Weining with a chuckle. Don't worry. I can take care of myself, so you can be at ease and busy yourself. Tan Xiu got up with a smile and raised his hand to stroke her soft hair. Then he turned around and left. After coming to the living room, he looked at Wolfhead sitting on the sofa and said in a deep voice, Take Li Yuchuan to the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs. Tell Jin Shi to meet me there if he comes. Understood. Wolfhead knew that Tan Xiu was about to take action and immediately ran to another villa outside. Soon after, two cars started outside the courtyard and quickly left the Blue Star Villa complex under the watchful eyes of Mu Weining on the balcony on the second floor. At the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs of Shanghai. The antique tea house had a total of 3 floors with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, giving off a classical atmosphere. There was a rock garden in the hall on the first floor. Beside the rock garden, there was an ancient tree that had been trimmed in an ingenious way. On the lush branches, there were even a few birds chirping. The second floor was filled with private boxes, each of which was very large. The classical decorations inside were full of charm, looking like the study rooms of scholars in ancient times. In the middle of the third floor was the office area, where the general manager's office was located. Around it were the observation tea houses, where one could sit and enjoy the beautiful scenery outside. Inside the 100-square-meter general manager's office, a beautiful woman in a bubble dress lazily nestled on the sofa with smoke curling up from a cigarette between her fingers. The oval-shaped face had flaming red lips, which were extremely sensual and slightly hoarse, transmitted to the young man by the window. "Chang Zhao, you know that this big sis hates trouble the most. Yet you brought those two scourges to my place. What exactly are your intentions? This big sis's place is not a den for hiding and sheltering filth." With his back facing the woman, Chang Zhao looked at the lake view outside the window and slowly shook his head. After she turned around, a smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, "Using the word hiding and sheltering filth to describe this place is a bit too serious, Sister Shui. Those two are just pitiful creatures, pawns for me to play. Don't worry. It won't take long for someone to redeem them." The woman elegantly took a puff of the cigarette and shook her head. "Kidnapping is not a small crime. If the other party calls the police, even your uncle will have to spend some effort to protect you. Why can't you just stay quiet for a while and not cause trouble for your uncle?" "My uncle has been very free lately." Chang Zhao shrugged and said, "I'm really happy to cause trouble for him because of such a trivial matter. After all, he'll lose the motivation to climb up if he's too free. Besides, Li Yuchuan was miserably bullied, and the main reason was my uncle, wasn't it? Since my uncle doesn't want him to have a good time, how can I be kind to him?" The woman forced a smile and shook her head. "You're really different from others, kid. Forget it. You can play slowly since you want to. But keep in mind that don't touch that woman and don't hurt that child." The smile on Chang Zhao's face receded and he coldly snorted. "That woman may be a bit good-looking, but she's not enough to enter this young master's eyes. As for that brat, that kick of his nearly made this old man die without descendants. He must be punished. Xiaohu has already taken some men to deal with him when we just came up. I hope he can still stand intact now." The lazy look on the woman's face gradually disappeared. She rubbed her temples and forced a smile. "I'm sure you know that even a rabbit will bite when it's anxious. Li Yuchuan is the captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force, and I'm sure you're aware of his ability. I'm afraid he'll go all out against you if you beat his son too badly." "Him?" Chang Zhao disdainfully said. "He can't even compare to a rabbit in my eyes. He's just a soft-footed shrimp at best. If he dares to play hard with me, then I'll make him taste true despair." Alas, the woman shook her head and slowly closed her eyes. She really couldn't be bothered with Chang Zhao's trivial matters. In any case, she had already advised him. If he insisted on doing things his own way, his uncle would clean up his mess if something happened. Pity, that man was a hero, yet he couldn't have a son. Why did he treat this brat as a treasure? Ring, ring, ring. The phone on the tea table suddenly rang. The woman opened her eyes again and reluctantly grabbed the phone. She looked at the caller ID and lightly asked, "Didn't I tell you, Manager Bai? I just came back from another city and I'm so tired that I don't even have the strength to speak." "Someone is here to make trouble, boss." Manager Bai's urgent voice came from the phone. The woman stared blankly and slightly furrowed her brows, asking, "Who is it? Don't we have security guards in the tea house? Can't they solve it? They're very skillful. Our 4 security guards on duty didn't even have the strength to fight back and were all knocked down by them," said Manager Bai. They've already gone to the 2nd floor and will probably reach the 3rd floor soon. Do you want to hide first, boss?" "Poor they?" asked the woman in a deep voice. "I don't know." Manager Bai shook his head. "But the young man in the lead looks familiar to me." The woman was silent for a moment and then indifferently said, "Notify the security team and tell them to come here as fast as possible. They came to my turf to make trouble, yet they want me to hide? I, Shuejie, can't afford to lose my face." She hung up the phone. The woman looked at Chang Zhao, who shot her a curious look. She sat up straight and said, "Call your men here immediately. Someone is here to make trouble and they should be here soon." "Understood." Chapter 11:15. Bam! The office's door was kicked open from the outside as Wolfhead and Li Yuchuan strode into the room. After Chang Zhao and the woman looked at him, Tan Xiu leisurely walked in from the outside. The woman's expression shifted. She had seen Li Yuchuan's photo and recognized him in a flash, but she couldn't recognize Wolfhead and Tan Xiu. "Who are you?" asked the woman indifferently as she walked 2 steps forward. She could tell that Tan Xiu was extraordinary. Tan Xiu glanced at her indifferently before his eyes immediately fell on Chang Zhao. He walked to Chang Zhao's side and pushed him away. Then, he sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette, saying lightly, "Are you Chang Zhao?" Chang Zhao vaguely felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. However, Tan Xiu's action of pushing him made him angry. He coldly snorted and said, "I am. Where the hell did you come from? Do you want to stand up for this Li Yuchuan?" "That's right. I want to stand up for him." Tan Xiu nodded. As the saying goes, one shouldn't get into trouble with one's wife and children. It's fine if you want to mess with Li Yuchuan, but threatening him with his wife and children is against the rules. Rules are made by those with strength. Li Yuchuan is just a pitiful worm, a chess piece abandoned by others, sneered Chang Zhao. "I don't care who you are, brat. But don't poke your nose into other people's business today, else your fate will be no better than Li Yuchuan's." "Are you threatening me?" Tan Xiu took a puff of his cigarette and sneered. "I would have killed you now if you didn't have a good uncle. It can be considered as getting rid of any future troubles. Anyways, I don't want to waste my breath with you. Hand over Li Yuchuan's wife and children and I'll let this matter go. I won't let you off lightly if you dare to do such despicable things again in the future." Chang Zhao squinted his eyes. He could faintly feel that this man was just putting on an act and didn't have any power. Moreover, he seemed to be very afraid of his uncle. With such a thought in mind, Chang Zhao's arrogance suddenly soared. He turned around and walked to the opposite side of Tan Xiu. He also sat on the sofa, crossed his legs, and sneered, "Brat, since you know who my uncle is, you should know that I'm not a pushover. If you want to play with me, I'll play with you today. Who do you think you are?" Tan Xiu looked at Chang Zhao as though he was looking at an idiot. He shook his head and said, "I've seen your uncle's information. He's a capable person, but how can his nephew be so idiotic?" Chang Zhao's face turned cold and he angrily shouted, "Say that again? Who do you think you are? How dare you criticize my uncle?" "Pa!" Jin Shi strode forward and fiercely slapped Chang Zhao's face, sending him flying from the sofa to the ground. At this moment, 4 strong men rushed in from outside the door. When they saw Chang Zhao, who was obviously beaten up, their expressions suddenly changed. They rushed to Chang Zhao's side and helped him up from the ground. Chang Zhao covered his cheek, but he didn't give the order to fight back. He knew Li Yuchuan's identity as the former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force. His 4 bodyguards were not his match at all. He knew that he had to be patient and wait for a large number of security guards under Sister Shue's control to arrive. That was when he would retaliate. After touching his cheek, Chang Zhao suddenly grinned and gave a thumbs up to Jin Shi. He then walked back to the sofa opposite Tan Xiu and sat down again. Then, he coldly said, "Someone once punched me, so I sent my men to chop off his arms. Someone once kicked me twice, so I sent my men to break his limbs. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling the truth. You must have something to rely on since you dare to make trouble here. Now, I'll give you some time to make a phone call. Use all your means and call all the people you can. I used to be a schemer and unscrupulous person. But this time, I don't want to play that trick anymore. I'll play fair and square with you." Tang Xiu was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Since you're Chang Guoxin's nephew, I'll give you a good lesson today. When facing an enemy, regardless of whether the other party is a monstrous overlord or an ant in the mud, you must clearly investigate the details of the other party. You must never take them lightly. Know the enemy and know yourself, and you'll be invincible in every battle. Underestimating the enemy will likely cause you to fail miserably." "I don't need you to preach to me," sneered Chang Zhao. It was Shui Xingmei, the woman in a cheongsam with flaming red lips. Her eyes had been firmly locked on Tan Xiu the moment he entered the room. In recent years, she had been helping her father manage the security company in secret and had spent a lot of time training the security guards. Therefore, she wasn't well informed and sometimes didn't contact the outside world for months, so she couldn't recognize the young man in front of her. But she was very confident in her ability to recognize people. She had a deep impression of Tan Xiao at first glance, but that was just her external memory. However, ever since Tan Xiao came to the office, his every move and every word and action exuded the aura of a superior, which made her secretly vigilant. That's right. Xue Xingmei agreed with Tan Xiao's last sentence. Although they were in a hostile state at the moment, there was still a bit of appreciation in her eyes. Your Excellency doesn't look like an ordinary person. May I know how to address you? Tan Xiao glanced at Xue Xingmei again and indifferently said, Don't you know how to introduce yourself before asking others' identity? Xue Xingmei's expression slightly changed, but she still replied, I'm Xue Xing. You can call me Boss Xue or Miss Xue. I'm the owner of this tea house. Tan Xiao indifferently said, You're the owner of this tea house, which means you're helping the wicked do evil deeds. From today onwards, close this tea house of yours. A cold light flashed in Xue Xingmei's eyes and she lightly said, It's not impossible for me to close this tea house, but you have to show me a trump card that will make me dread, right? Otherwise, wouldn't I be laughed at by others if I shut down this tea house with just a few words of yours? Tan Xiao pointed to Chang Zhao and asked, How is your strength, or the force behind you, compared to him? Xue Xingmei pondered for a few seconds and slowly said, Between the two of us. Since it's between the two of us, as long as I can make this brat bow and scrape like a slave and apologize, does that mean I have the ability to make you close this tea house? Tan Xiao said. Xue Xingmei became more curious about Tan Xiao. She really wanted to see what kind of ability Tan Xiao had to make Chang Zhao bow and scrape to him. Tan Xiao took out his mobile. He found Chang Guoxin's private phone number from the information and dialed it. At the southern military region, Chang Guoxin got up very early as usual. Even though he was now in a high position, he still maintained the habit of exercising, so his physical fitness was very good. He had just finished his jog and poured a glass of water, but before he could drink it, his mobile phone on the table rang. He had been in a good mood recently. With the help of the Tang family's cultivation, he finally defeated his archenemy. Even the news from the top said that he might be able to go further in the near future. It must be noted that it was very difficult to go further at his current level unless he had the support of others. It was also because of this reason that he was closer to the Tang family and was more and more apprehensive about the Tang family's power. Chang Guoxin even secretly decided that he must cling to this big tree, the Tang family. It was even possible for him to have 2 more stars on his shoulders in the future. Who's calling me at this time? Chang Guoxin grabbed his mobile and saw the caller ID. It turned out to be an unfamiliar number from Shanghai. He immediately wanted to hang up. However, he recalled that his precious nephew was still in the imperial capital, so he hesitated for a moment before he answered the call and said, Who is it? I'm Tan Xiao of the Tang family. An indifferent voice came out of the phone. Chang Guoxin's heart was shaken and his eyes flickered. Although he was not a member of the Tang family, he knew some things about the Tang family, especially some things about Tan Xiao. He was very clear that the Tang family's old patriarch, Tang Guoxing, had begun to train Tan Xiao as the future successor of the Tang family. The degree of importance he attached to him was even higher than that of his 3 sons. In an instant his expression changed. Perhaps it was because Tang Xiao was likely to become the next head of the Tang family. His attitude was very humble as he said, Young Master Tang, I didn't expect that you would look for me. May I know what instructions do you have for me? Chang Zhao is my nephew, right? Tan Xiao lightly said. He's in big trouble and there are only 2 paths in front of him now. Chang Guoxin was greatly shaken and hurriedly said, Young Master Tang, did that bastard Chang Zhao offend you? If so, you can rest assured that I'll teach him a good lesson and make him apologize to you. It's just a trivial matter that he provoked me. I'll give you face and let him off this time, Tan Xiao lightly said. But the one he provoked is someone from the state's Special Abilities Bureau. I'm sure you're no stranger to those people, no? Hiss, Chang Guoxin gasped and said in amazement, "Young Master Tang, I know a bit about the situation of the Special Abilities Bureau. They are a group of terrifyingly powerful ability users. May I ask which are the two paths you just mentioned? Can you save that little bastard Chang Zhao's life?" "The first path is to wait for the Special Abilities Bureau's people to investigate him and wait for a secret execution," Tan Xiu lightly said. "The second path is to be sent to the military court and be executed for treason." No matter which of these two paths he chose, they were both dead ends. As for me, of course I can save his life. But he's now clamoring in front of me, relying on his uncle who's a general. He's very arrogant. Tell me, do I need to use any means to save such a brat? "A military court?" Chang Guoxin hurriedly asked. "How come there's another military court? Young Master Tang, what exactly did he do to unexpectedly?" Chapter 11:16. The military is investigating the theft of the aeroglider. Tan Xiu said indifferently, "You should be able to get some relevant information given your status, right? The one who stole the aeroglider is Li Yuchuan, the former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force. Do you know why he took the risk and risked his life to steal it?" "Was it Chang Zhao's instigation?" asked Chang Guoxin in shock. "He didn't instigate it, but he forced it," said Tan Xiu lightly. "Your precious nephew kidnapped his wife and son and blackmailed him for 2 million yuan. Do you think he can get away with it once the higher-ups investigate it? Do you think you can get away with it? That bastard is simply audacious." Chang Guoxin angrily shouted. "Young Master Tang, you must find a way to suppress this matter. That bastard brat, I'll definitely teach him a severe lesson. He's right in front of me and he's very arrogant," said Tan Xiu. "How are you going to tell him? Just use your brain." Having said that, Tan Xiu threw the phone to the incredulous Chang Zhao and indifferently said, "Didn't you want to see my power? Didn't you tell me to call as many people as I can? I can make you kneel in front of me and apologize with just a phone call. Take it. I'm sure you've heard who the other party is." Chang Zhao's hands trembled a bit, but he still caught the phone. If there was anyone in the world who could make him afraid, it was none other than his uncle, Chang Guoxin. "Hey!" Chang Zhao tried to speak, but was interrupted as soon as he spoke. "Hey my ass! You bastard! Do you know how big of a trouble you've caused? The Tang family is a top-notch family that even I have to curry favor with. It's also the support that I can rely on to advance further, or perhaps even advance 1 or 2 steps further. Yet, you dare to compete with Tang Xiu, the young master of the Tang family? Who gave you the courage?" Chang Guoxin's angry roar came from the phone. "The Tang family's young master? Tan Xiu?" Chang Zhao's face instantly turned pale. He finally realized why he faintly felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar the first time he saw Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu of the Tang family. He was the future successor of the Tang family's patriarch, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, and the renowned young divine doctor in China. It's over. This was like poking a hornet's nest. Even if he didn't die, he would probably lose a layer of skin. Uncle Chang Guoxin's angry voice once again sounded from the phone. "I don't care what you do, you must quell young Master Tang's anger and beg him to save your life. Otherwise, not only will I not be able to save you, I'm afraid I'll also be implicated by you. There's even a possibility that my uniform might be stripped off." Chang Zhao was taken aback, and then he said in horror, "Uncle, it can't be, right? You bastard! Do you have nothing better to do? Why did you kidnap Li Yuchuan's wife and child?" cursed Chang Guoxin. "Do you know what that bastard Li Yuchuan did for that 2 million yuan? What he had done was more than enough for him to lose his head 100 times over. You forced him to get money, so you couldn't escape the responsibility. Let me tell you something. Tan Xiu's identity is so big that you can't even imagine it. So I can't save you now. The only one who can save you is him. Little bastard, if you can't handle this matter well, I'll break your legs when we get back." Chang Zhao hung up the phone in a daze and looked at Tan Xiu and Li Yuchuan with intense fear in his eyes. He was very conceited, but that didn't mean he was a desperado. He was even more fragile than ordinary people in the face of the threat of death. He had already committed a terrible disaster, and he was soberly aware that there was only one person who could save him now, Tan Xiu, whom he had just offended. Plop! Chang Zhao came to Tan Xiu in 2 steps and directly knelt on the ground. Regret and worry could be seen on his handsome face. His lips squirmed a few times and then he said, "Young Master Tang, I had eyes but failed to recognize MBTI. I didn't recognize you before. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have done such despicable things, and I shouldn't have offended you. You're a magnanimous man, so please don't lower yourself to my level. If you still can't vent your hatred, you can beat and scold me, but please save me." At the side, Xue Xingmei was completely dumbfounded. She already had a bad premonition after hearing what Tan Xiu said on the phone. But now that she saw Chang Zhao's action, a storm was set off in her heart. Young Master Tang? Is he the young master of the Tang family in the imperial capital that Changguoxin is attached to? In this world, only a family with the surname Tang could make Chang Zhao lose his composure and beg like this, right? Xue Xingmei moved her eyes away from Chang Zhao's face and looked at Tan Xiu's indifferent expression. She felt that she should say something, but she swallowed the words back when she recalled her and Chang Zhao's attitude toward Tan Xiu. What should she say? What should she say? Plead on behalf of Chang Zhao? Xue Xingmei was perfectly aware of her own identity. Although her family and the Chang family had a close relationship, they had nothing to do with the Tang family in the imperial capital. Would they care about her even if she asked for leniency? Suddenly, Xue Xingmei recalled Tan Xiu's request and slowly said, "Mr. Tang, I apologize to you for my previous presumptuous behavior. You can rest assured that I'll close this tea house today according to your wishes." Tan Xiu shot her an indifferent look and immediately said, "It's better to be taught a lesson now than to suffer a big loss later. I hope you won't leak even half a word about today's matter, else the lesson you'll receive will be more than just a little. Get out first." Xue Xingmei was secretly indignant. Although she was the daughter of a wealthy family, she had never been taught a lesson all these years by relying on her own ability, let alone being threatened like this. However, she was also perfectly aware that Tan Xiu's means and ability were not something she could contend with, so she could only endure the unhappiness inside and turned to leave the room. Looking at Chang Zhao kneeling in front of him, Tan Xiu said, "You should have known it would be like this earlier. It's true that you're young and full of vigor, but it's shameful for you to commit crimes by relying on your family background. Let's not talk about anything else first and release Li Yuquan's wife and son first." Chang Zhao hurriedly complied and then shouted at the 4 dumbfounded bodyguards who were completely petrified at the moment, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring Li Yuquan's wife and son here." One of the bodyguards hesitated for a moment and then forced a smile. "The woman is fine, but her son, both his legs are broken. Do you think we should send him to the hospital first?" Chang Zhao's pupils shrunk and an intense chill filled his heart. "What did you say?" Disbelief was written all over Li Yuquan's face. He dashed toward the bodyguard and grabbed his clothes, his eyes seemingly shooting fire. The bodyguard's lips squirmed and he said, "You can't blame us for this. Blame your son for being too ruthless despite his young age. Young Master Chang. He nearly turned into a eunuch with a kick. I was there at the time and saw him curling up on the ground and wailing in pain for a long time." After releasing him, Li Yuquan suddenly turned around and glared fiercely at Chang Zhao, shouting, "My son is only 8 years old. He'll never hit anyone so easily." Chang Zhao glanced at Tan Xiu and forced a smile. "Your son does look weak, not like a boy at all, but he's really powerful when he's ruthless. That kick made me unable to touch women for at least half a month. Fortunately, I was sent to the hospital in time for treatment, else I wouldn't be able to touch women again for the rest of my life." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt them and said in a deep voice, "Cut the crap and bring him here immediately. I also have some medical skills. If it's not a big problem, I can treat it." Chang Zhao suddenly recalled one of Tan Xiu's identities. He immediately nodded and said, That's right. Young Master Tang is also a famous divine doctor in the country. I'm sure he can cure your son given his strength. Don't just stand there like an idiot. Hurry up and invite him over. Very soon." Li Yuchuan's wife and son were brought to the office. When the husband and wife met, apart from the woman crying bitterly, Li Yuchuan's eyes were also filled with tears despite his unyielding character. Plop. Li Yuchuan had now witnessed Tan Xiu's ability and learned that Tan Xiu was a well-known young divine doctor in China. He directly knelt in front of Tan Xiu and said with tears in his eyes, "Please save my son, Mr. Tang. He's still young. His life will be ruined if he becomes disabled in the future. Li Yuchuan's life is worthless, but if you can cure my son, my life will be yours in the future." Tang Xiu sighed inwardly. The 7 or 8-year-old boy's legs were indeed seriously injured. Even his knees were badly mutilated, obviously caused by a blunt object hitting him with a heavy force. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that even the world's top medical treatment wouldn't be able to make him recover and that he would have to sit in a wheelchair in the future. "Are you sure?" asked Tan Xiu lightly. "I'm sure," said Li Yuchuan decisively. "Tell the woman who just left to prepare water, gauze, and plasterboard for me immediately." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Go to the nearby hospital to buy them immediately if you don't have them. All of you wait outside. I'll treat him." After a short while, only Tan Xiu and the boy, who had tears in his eyes but was trying not to cry, were left in the office. His fists were tightly clenched and his willpower was very strong. He didn't groan despite the severe pain. "Will you feel desperate if you can only live in a wheelchair in the future?" Tan Xiu didn't act immediately but looked at the boy leaning on the sofa and asked. The boy's lips squirmed a few times before he silently shook his head and said, "I know why I was beaten. They want to make things difficult for my father. I'll accept it even if I have to sit in a wheelchair in the future as long as they don't target my father." "You're willing to do it?" asked Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "I don't want to, but that's the only way." The boy shook his head. "Uncle, my legs are very painful and my bones are exposed. I know what will happen to me in the future. But I'm a bit sad." "What are you sad about?" asked Tan Xiu. "I'm afraid I won't be able to be a man like my father in the future," said the boy. Chapter 11:17. Tan Xiu smiled and rubbed his little head, saying, "Since I said that I can cure you, I can naturally make you recover. Don't worry. You'll become a vigorous and lively young man in the future." The boy's eyes lit up. He quietly observed Tan Xiu for more than 10 seconds, and then thoughtfully said, "Uncle, if my father works for you in the future, then I'll also work for you in the future." Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "Do you feel honored to work for me? I believe in my father's vision, and I also think that you're very powerful," said the boy. "Those people in the room just now are very afraid of you." Tan Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he asked, "Why do you think they're afraid of me?" "There were 5 people in the room when I was carried in just now," said the boy. "You're one of them, and there's another one who is about the same age as you. The way he looked at you was strange. It's the kind of look one would have when seeing a horrible person or thing. My father also seems to be afraid of you. Sometimes he wants to say something, but he doesn't. The other 2 look at you with respect, but the premise of respecting someone is fear. I didn't expect you to analyze it so clearly and logically." Tan Xiu said with a smile, "Did you observe all of this?" The boy nodded. Tan Xiu fell into silence. He was a bit shocked inwardly because he didn't expect that the boy's observation ability was so powerful. It must be noted that he was now suffering great pain. If it were an ordinary child, he would have already screamed in pain. How could he still have the mood to observe everyone in the room? "Can you answer a question for me?" After a while, Tan Xiu slowly asked. The boy still nodded. "You should be 8 years old this year, right?" asked Tan Xiu. "You should be in the 2nd grade at your age. Can you tell me about your academic performance?" A proud look appeared on the boy's face. Even though it was only a trace of pain, he still said, "I'm the best in the whole school. I've always been the first among more than 684th grade students." 4th grade? Tan Xiu looked surprised. The boy said, "I jumped 2 grades in a row." Raising his thumbs up, Tan Xiu praised, "I never thought that you're actually a little genius. That's right. Like father, like son." Your father is very good. He's quite capable. As his son, you naturally won't be too bad. The boy said, I want to be a marshal in the future, so I naturally have to work hard. Marshal? Tan Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the little guy and said, You can't be a marshal now, unless you can become the most awesome big shot in our country. The boy's expression darkened slightly when he heard this. Very soon. A basin of warm water, a few clean towels, gauze, plasterboard, and other medical supplies were all sent to the room. As the door was closed by Shuizing Mei from the outside, Tang Xiu took out a sharp dagger from his interspatial ring and cut the boy's pants. Then he said, It's gonna be very painful. Can you bear it? The boy trembled slightly and said, Can you give me a towel? Tan Xiu's expression changed as he asked, Stuff it into my mouth? The boy nodded heavily. Tan Xiu handed him a white towel and watched him stuff the white towel into his mouth. He secretly praised him in his heart. He cleaned, wiped, and used his primal chaos force to correct the dislocated broken bones on the knees and slowly moved the broken bones back to their original positions. He could clearly feel the boy's pain because big drops of sweat rolled down his face and his seemingly thin body was trembling violently. Endure it. Tan Xiu took out the body-refining potion from his space ring and slowly poured it on the boy's knees. Along with the whimpering sound coming from the boy's throat, Tan Xiu pressed his palms on the boy's knees. Time ticked by. Half an hour later, Tang Xiu removed his hands from the boy's knees. He looked at the boy who was sweating profusely and looked dispirited and listless. He was secretly surprised, because his treatment process was simple and direct. Even an ordinary adult would find it difficult to bear the pain and would faint from the pain. He didn't expect the boy to be able to endure it. His willpower is stronger than an adult's. Even some ordinary cultivators can't compare to him in terms of willpower. It's a pity that his physique is ordinary. Otherwise, he would definitely be a cultivation genius worth cultivating. However, given his age, he may be able to achieve great achievements in the future once he embarks on the path of cultivation as long as his willpower remains as firm as a blade's edge. This thought flashed in Tan Xiu's mind. He immediately wrapped the boy's knees with gauze and fixed it with a cast. He then said with a smile, Starting from today, you can only stay here for the next 7 days. Your feet are not allowed to touch the ground, and you'll need someone to help you with any movement. You'll be able to recover after 7 days. The boy asked with a trembling voice, Can I sleep for a while? Go to sleep, Tan Xiu said with a smile. In the corridor outside, Li Yuchuan hugged his wife with an anxious look in his eyes. Although he learned from Chang Zhao that Tan Xiu was a divine doctor, he didn't dare to fully believe that Tan Xiu could completely cure his son's leg injury. He was afraid that Tan Xiu couldn't cure his son and that his son would become disabled in the future. He would probably feel guilty for the rest of his life if that were to happen. Creak! The office door was opened and Li Yuchuan instantly released his wife. He strode forward and asked, How is it, Mr. Tang? Don't let your son walk for the next 7 days, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Forget it. You still have other things to do, so don't worry about it. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself, Chang Zhao. You must guard this child closely for the next 7 days. You must carry him on your back even when he needs to eat, drink, and go to the toilet. You must take care of him meticulously. If you can do it, you'll be done for. Otherwise, you'll have to pay for your crimes with your life. I'll do as you say, young Master Tang, said Chang Zhao without hesitation. I'll definitely take good care of him. Tan Xiu slowly nodded and said, I know you want to spend more time with your wife and child, Li Yuchuan. I'll give you half an hour, then you must come with me to solve your problem once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Tang, said Li Yuchuan gratefully. No need to thank me. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, You haven't forgotten what you said before, have you? Li Yuchuan stared blankly for a moment before he solemnly nodded and said, I haven't. In the viewing hall of the tea house, with a curious look on his face, Wolfhead stood in front of Tan Xiu and asked, Do you really want to take Li Yuchuan as your subordinate, sect master? You must know that he did it for his family, but... Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt him and lightly said, If the army can give him a sense of belonging and he hasn't been abandoned, I'm afraid he wouldn't have done such a thing. In other words, what would you do if you were standing in Li Yuchuan's position? Wolfhead quietly pondered for a while and then bitterly said, I'm afraid I'd have done the same thing if I were him. That's right. Tan Xiu nodded. Everything has two sides. He can play his role if he can control it. He can take risks for his wife and child, even at the cost of his life. This shows that he's not afraid of death, and he's affectionate and loyal. If he can become our brother in the future, I'm afraid he'll also treat you as his family in the future as long as you regard him as your closest brother. To tell you the truth, I really appreciate this kind of person, even those soldiers who are willing to risk their lives for the country. Wolfhead firmly nodded and said, loyalty to the country and the people is a prerequisite for every soldier. It's the most basic bottom line. But now that we've left the army, we're only loyal to you. I'm also loyal to this country, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression moved and he lightly smiled. It seems that Jin Shi received my order and rushed here without stopping. He's already outside. Go and bring him here. A few minutes later, Jin Shi came to the viewing hall under Wolfhead's lead. After standing in front of Tan Xiu, he respectfully said, Sect Master, is there anything you need from me? Tan Xiu smiled and waved his hand, motioning him to sit down. Then he said, Wolfhead gave me a suggestion, and I think it's very good. That's why I called you here directly to discuss it with you. Jin Shi glanced at Wolfhead and respectfully said, Sect Master, please give me your order. I'll do my best to complete it. Jin Shi, there's something I want to ask you before I talk to you. Tan Xiu smilingly said, Do you think Ao and the others have become Tang sect elders but you haven't? What do you think you're thinking? Jin Shi was silent for a while before he forced a smile and said, I'm very unwilling, Sect Master. But you set the rules yourself. Since I'm not the first to become a Golden Core stage expert, so I can't become a sect elder, it proves that my efforts are not enough. Tan Xiu faintly nodded and said, I'm very glad that you have this kind of understanding. But I'll give you a chance now. If you can establish a huge intelligence network all over the world within 2 years, I'll make you the newest elder of the Tang sect. Jin Shi's eyes lit up and he replied in a deep voice, I'll do my best, Sect Master. All right, I'll tell you about the establishment of the intelligence network and the expansion of the Tang sect's outer disciples, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Are you going to expand the number of outer disciples in our sect, Sect Master? Asked Jin Shi curiously. Since we're going to vigorously develop the sect, we naturally need a lot of outer disciples. Tan Xiu nodded. Also, these outer disciples may not necessarily have formidable cultivation, but they will be of great help to the inner disciples, which will be beneficial to the entire sect. Jin Shi's expression shifted. He saw Tan Xiu take out a cigarette and hurriedly lit it for Tan Xiu. Then he asked, What do you mean, Master? Chapter 11:18. A glint flickered in Tan Xiu's eyes as he slowly said, Building an intelligence network requires buying people's hearts. Money may only work for ordinary people, but for some rich and powerful people, I'm afraid they will have to come up with a bigger capital. Don't tell me you didn't encounter this kind of obstacle when you were building the intelligence network? You're right, Sect Master. Jin Shi said, This is what I'm most helpless about. Due to the previous foundation, it's very easy for us to select intelligence personnel at the bottom level, but it's a bit troublesome when it comes to people at the higher level. For example? Asked Tan Xiu. For example, a small boss of a company who has millions or even tens of millions in assets. Although he's just an ordinary wealthy businessman, it'll take a lot of effort to make him wholeheartedly gather intelligence for us, said Jin Shi. Previously, the sect had given me 1 billion yuan, and I had only subdued 12 of these wealthy merchants, and I had paid a price of several 100 million yuan. If this goes on, let alone 1 billion yuan, even 10 or 100 billion yuan will be far from enough. Furthermore, these are just ordinary wealthy businessmen. If it were those real rich and powerful people, they wouldn't even bat an eye if we throw money at them. As for those with power and influence, they are even more dismissive of money, because if they want to obtain money, they have too many ways to do so. How many provincial-level administrative regions are there in China? Tan Xiu nodded and asked. How many municipalities are there? How many autonomous regions? How many administrative autonomous regions are there? How many cities are there in total? There are a total of 34 provincial-level administrative regions in China, including 23 provinces, 4 municipalities, 5 autonomous regions, and 2 special administrative regions, said Jin Shi. There are a total of 333 prefecture-level administrative regions, including 285 prefecture-level cities, 15 regions, 30 autonomous prefectures, and 3 leagues. Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Jin Shi and said, "You know it very well, which means you've put a lot of effort in this aspect. Since I made you the person in charge of the intelligence network, I'll help you solve the problems. From now on, I'll help you select a general intelligence team leader in each province. Once they're confirmed, they'll become your direct subordinates. You'll also need to select a deputy team leader in each province and be sure to conceal the relationship between them. It'll be like splitting into 2 lines to obtain intelligence at the same time." Jin Shi was pleasantly surprised. "With your help, Sect Master, the construction of the intelligence network will be much simpler." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "I originally wanted to take advantage of this time to relax, but now it seems that I can't. However, although I'll help you solve the domestic situation, you'll have to personally build the foreign intelligence network. For the next half a year, focus your work on Huaxia. Half a year later, when the domestic intelligence network is almost ready, you can start setting up overseas." All right. 2 hours passed quickly as the 2 of them conversed. When Tan Xiu stepped out of the viewing hall with Jin Shi and Wolfhead, Li Yuchuan had been waiting outside for a long time. Xue Xingmei was also with him. "You're from the Xue family of Dongshan province?" Tan Xiu glanced at Xue Xingmei and asked indifferently. Xue Xingmei nodded and said, "Yes, Xue Guanzhong is my father." "Xue Guanzhong, the head of the Xue family in Dongshan province?" Tan Xiu lightly asked. Since the Xue family has delivered themselves to my door, then I'll start with them first. Xue Xingmei, take me to see your father. Tell him to decline everything and wait for me at the Xue family's ancestral residence." Xue Xingmei's complexion changed and she hurriedly said, "Young Master Tang, it was indeed my fault before. Please don't stoop to my level and stoop to my level. In case my father finds out that I've offended you, he'll definitely kill me." "I'm not looking for your father to pursue such a trivial matter," Tan Xiu indifferently said. "Inform him that I have something important to discuss with him in person. Tell him to pick out the most secret place of your Xue family. Keep in mind that I don't want anyone else to know about my meeting with your father." Xue Xingmei's expression moved and she immediately nodded. "I'll inform my father right away." Tan Xiu thought for a while and waved his hand. "Forget it. Just go ahead and tell your father about it. Tell him that even the core members of the Xue family can't be informed about my meeting with him. Only you, me, and him will know about it." "Understood," Xue Xingmei replied and quickly left. Tan Xiu then shifted to Li Yuchuan and lightly said, "Let's go. We're going to the Blue Starfish Mansion." At the Blue Starfish Mansion. This place had been requisitioned by the State Special Abilities Bureau, but Duanmu Lin didn't rush to leave and instead stayed here, waiting for the news about Li Yuchuan. He knew that the aero glider was of great importance and that it would bring huge troubles to the military once the news was leaked out. "You haven't found him yet?" Duanmu Lin, who was sitting inside, asked in a deep voice as Aquababe entered the room with an ugly expression. "We still haven't found him, Chief," said Aquababe bitterly. "That Li Yuchuan seems to have vanished into thin air. We've activated all our intelligence networks, but we still can't find any trace of him." Duanmu Lin got up from the sofa and was about to speak when the mobile phone on the table suddenly rang. His expression shifted and he grabbed the phone. After picking up the call, he asked in a deep voice, "What's the situation?" "Chief, Mr. Tang has returned to the Blue Starfish Mansion, and the man with him is the fugitive we've been searching for, Li Yuchuan." A deep voice came from the phone. "Tan Xiu?" Li Yuchuan? Duanmu Lin furrowed his brows and immediately relaxed. After hanging up the phone, he strode outside and quickly saw Tan Xiao and Li Yuchuan in the parking lot. What's the situation, Tan Xiao? Duanmu Lin paced a few steps forward and coldly glanced at Li Yuchuan before asking. I originally wanted to stay out of this matter, but I didn't expect to bump into him. Tan Xiao forced a wry smile. He's Li Yuchuan, the guy who stole the aeroglider from the military camp. It's just that I didn't expect that he would give the aeroglider to the previous auction organizer and immediately flee after something went wrong. He even broke into our magnificent Tang Corp's branch in the imperial capital and wanted to steal our belongings. Hence, he was caught red-handed by my men. Duanmu Lin nodded without a word. He then looked at Li Yuchuan and asked in a deep voice, Who else did you disclose the information about the aeroglider to other than the auction organizer? I didn't disclose it to anyone except the auction organizer. Li Yuchuan shook his head. Also, the information I disclosed to the auction organizer was not comprehensive and I didn't disclose many important functions. Why did you steal the aeroglider? Asked Duanmu Lin in a deep voice. Don't you know that this aircraft is a top secret of our country? I need money, answered Li Yuchuan bitterly. He needed money? Duanmu Lin had thought of countless reasons for Li Yuchuan to steal the aeroglider, but he didn't expect the reason to be so simple. He only needed money? He even dared to steal the aeroglider from the military camp? It must be noted that the seriousness of this matter was enough to send him to the military court and be executed countless times. Duanmu Lin shifted to Tan Xiao and forced a wry smile. Now I finally understand the power of the saying, men die for wealth just as birds die for food. A dignified former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force, an iron-blooded warrior shouldering the mission of the country, is actually willing to disregard everything for money. You should have investigated his situation, said Tan Xiao. He was abandoned, and it's not easy to survive in society. It's even more difficult to become rich and powerful. Perhaps it was that game in the army that caused his mentality to change. This kind of person deserves to die, said Duanmu Lin coldly. Senior Duanmu, since he didn't pass the information about the aeroglider to anyone else, let's just forget about it. Tan Xiao smilingly said. Let's solve this matter before any problems arise. Leave this guy to me. I need him to be the second-generation aeroglider tester. A aeroglider tester? Asked Duanmu Lin with a strange expression. It should be easy to find such a tester, Tan Xiao, right? Chapter 11:19. In a guest room in the Blue Starfish Mansion, Tan Xiao and Duanmu Lin had already arrived from the parking lot. Only Tan Xiao and Duanmu Lin came here. Tan Xiao, I believe you won't do anything that will harm our country, but I still need a promise from you today, said Duanmu Lin with a serious expression. He didn't even light the cigarette Tan Xiao gave him. All right, I'll give you a promise today. As long as you're still alive, I'll never do anything that will harm Huaxia, said Tan Xiao. I'll even go all out to help our country once it's in trouble as long as you're still alive. Duanmu Lin squinted and nodded without a word. A glint flickered in his eyes as he said, Tan Xiao, this promise of yours is based on the fact that I'm still alive. As for my identity and my abilities, you should be very clear about them. I can live for at least a few decades under normal circumstances. You can live for hundreds of years if I want to. Tan Xiao shook his head. Duanmu Lin's body trembled. After a long silence, he slowly said, What do you want to do? I want you to live longer, but I need you to turn a blind eye to some things, said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. Your conditions are very generous and the temptation is too great, said Duanmu Lin. But I'm in charge of politics, so I can't break my bottom line. If your request is too excessive, I can't agree even if you tempt me with hundreds of years of life. I'm really happy that Senior Duanmu has his own principles and bottom line, said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. But have you forgotten my promise just now? As long as you're still alive, I won't do anything that will harm Huaxia. You mean? Asked Duanmu Lin. Senior Duanmu, you should be aware of my abilities and the power I have, said Tan Xiao. But I can tell you right now that if I want to, I can even overthrow the Huaxia kingdom with ease. However, as a Taoist cultivator, I have no interest in worldly power. What I pursue is cultivation, and what I pursue is to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. As a cultivator, I need to consume a lot of cultivation resources, and where do these cultivation resources come from? Naturally, they are purchased with money. I can't do things like burning, killing, and plundering. Therefore, I need to expand my influence in the secular world, obtain enormous wealth, and purchase large amounts of cultivation resources. You should understand what I'm saying, right? Duanmu Lin said without hesitation, I understand. Tan Xiu nodded and said, since you understand it, then it'll be easier for you to accept it. If I want to expand my influence, I need to do a lot of things. For example, I need to set up a company and earn money through formal channels. However, making money wasn't an easy task, so I needed a lot of information to figure out how to make money. Therefore, I decided to get rid of the Darkwind organization and build a huge intelligence network all over the world. Hiss. Duanmu Lin was aware that what Tan Xiu said next was a bit important, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. Getting rid of the Darkwind organization? Building an intelligence network all over the world? If Tan Xiu could really do it, then he would make everyone in the world dread him. You don't need to be shocked, Senior Duanmu, said Tan Xiu lightly. Don't doubt my words. I can wipe out all the cultivation forces in the world if I want to. It's just a trifling Darkwind organization. I don't need to pay too much of a price, nor do I need to use my trump card. Duanmu Lin suddenly recalled a woman, a breathtakingly beautiful woman who was so powerful that he couldn't breathe. He looked at the confident expression on Tan Xiu's face and asked with difficulty, that woman who threatened me, who is she to you? You mean Yen, right? Tan Xiu chuckled. She's my apprentice. That's impossible. Duanmu Lin exclaimed. She's tens and hundreds of times stronger than you. It's impossible for her to be your apprentice. Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Duanmu Lin and lightly said, there are too many things you don't know about, Senior Duanmu. Yen is indeed very powerful, much stronger than me. But if it weren't for an accident, I could have destroyed the entire Earth with a flick of my finger and destroyed the entire Milky Way galaxy with a punch. There are some things I don't want to say, but it doesn't mean I don't have the strength to do so. It's reasonable to say that I don't need to say much to you given your identity. But I came back from that place, after all, and I'm living under the rules of this world. I'm also a descendant of China, so I can reveal some information to you. That place? Came back? Duanmu Lin's pupils shrunk and he finally realized how terrifying Tan Xiu was. Suddenly, he recalled the intelligence he once investigated on Tan Xiu. It was the year when Tan Xiu was in his second year of high school. The genius turned into a waste and was even called a fool by many people. There must be something fishy about this abnormal thing. Duanmu Lin found that he really couldn't see through Tan Xiu. It was even more difficult for him to understand what kind of existence he was. Tan Xiu, can you seriously answer a question of mine? Duanmu Lin gradually calmed down after a long time and asked. Go ahead. Tan Xiu nodded. When that terrifying demonic beast appeared in the Himalayas, why were you the one who risked your life while your disciple with monstrous strength didn't appear? Asked Duanmu Lin. Once Yen and the others acted, they would be detected by the heavenly Tao of this world, said Tan Xiu calmly. They must leave this world once that happens. Duanmu Lin was deeply shocked after realizing that the woman named Yen was not the only one under Tan Xiu's control. Suddenly, he realized something and exclaimed, you mean they have all become immortals? Become immortals? Immortals? A disdainful look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he indifferently said, there are some things you don't need to ask, Senior Duanmu. The reason why I'm telling you this today is mainly to make it convenient for you to turn a blind eye in China in the future. Duanmu Lin pondered for a while and slowly asked, has it already started? Almost. Tan Xiu nodded. Since it's almost done, why do you still want to tell me? Duanmu Lin forced a wry smile. You can control your own intelligence network. In any case, Don't let me catch you, else I won't let you off lightly. You won't be able to catch me as long as you don't take the initiative to look for them. Tan Xiu lightly smiled. I've prepared a generous gift to thank you, Senior Duanmu. I hope you like it. Having said that, a cultivation manual appeared in Tan Xiu's hand out of thin air. He handed it to Duanmu Lin and lightly smiled. You may be an ability user, but there's no rule stating that ability users can't cultivate cultivation manuals. As long as you can control the two energies in your body, you may have some achievements in the future. A cultivation manual? A shocked expression appeared on Duanmu Lin's aged face. He didn't expect that Tang Xiu would be so generous as to directly give him a cultivation manual. It must be noted that such a cultivation manual was extremely precious, and it would definitely cause a great uproar if it fell into the hands of others. It was even possible to set off a bloody storm. Nascent soul stage? The highest one can cultivate is actually the nascent soul stage? Duanmu Lin's hands holding the cultivation manual slightly trembled. He reluctantly moved his eyes away and looked at Tan Xiu with a complicated expression. Is this considered as a bribe? I think so, Tan Xiu lightly smiled. Duanmu Lin took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. He then scolded with a smile, "Scram. Take that bastard and get out of here. If you want to make money by relying on the aeroglider, then hurry up and develop the second generation." Got it. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and his figure instantly disappeared from the room. Now that Duanmu Lin was the only one left in the spacious room, he flipped open the cultivation manual again and read it for more than half an hour before he closed it again, unable to suppress the joy in his heart. Gradually, his expression turned a bit strange. As the energy in his body flowed according to the circulation route of the cultivation manual, he found that he could easily complete the qi condensation stage's circulation. What he didn't expect was that when he began to circulate according to the foundation establishment stage's cultivation route, the energy in his body broke through to the late stage of the foundation establishment stage in one fell swoop. This power is at least 10 times stronger than before. Duanmu Lin clenched his fists and felt the surging power in his body. He really wanted to roar a few times. But he eventually suppressed this impulse, and a thought sprouted from the bottom of his heart. If every ability user could easily cultivate after obtaining a cultivation technique, then the strength of the ability users in the State Special Abilities Bureau would greatly increase. When that time came, the strength of the entire Special Abilities Bureau would skyrocket. The thought made Duanmu Lin somewhat restless. He strode out of the room and shouted, "Notify all the top executives of the Special Abilities Bureau to return to the headquarters in the imperial capital, except for those in charge of the Himalayas." Outside the Blue Starfish Mansion, when Li Yuchuan jumped off the boat with Tan Xiu and returned to the shore, his heart was finally at ease. The feeling of surviving a disaster made him feel grateful to Tan Xiu. "Thank you, boss." Li Yuchuan followed behind Tan Xiu and spoke in a low voice. "I paid a great price to save your life," said Tan Xiu without looking back. "You should know what to do next." "My life is yours from now on," said Li Yuchuan respectfully. "I'll carry out any order you give me immediately." "Your son is a good man. Tell him to come out of the greenhouse." Tan Xiu nodded. "Someone will pick him up soon." Li Yuchuan's expression changed and he hurriedly asked, "This is—" "You can refuse, of course," said Tan Xiu lightly. "But the consequence of refusing is that your son can only be an ordinary person for the rest of his life. You and your wife must let go of him if you want to transform into a dragon." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.